Chapter 1050. Wuxia laughed. Although she was kind, she wasn't a good person. Only his lord could say such honest words. How does my lord plan to settle the captives? Although the captives hadn't been distributed yet, they had to plan ahead. If it was an ordinary army, the soldiers captured in the middle of a battle would be thrown to the front as cannon fodder. This seemed cruel, but it had its benefits. Firstly, it could increase the number of soldiers and intimidate the enemy. Secondly, it could use proper methods to get rid of the weeds. Thirdly, it could reduce the number of people to feed the army and save on food expenses. Finally, it could use them as a shield. It was really making the best use of everything. Captives were different from the army. They had different qualities. If they were left untreated, they would become a burden to the army. Those captives had eaten rice for more than 10 years to grow to their current size. If they didn't contribute to society and died, it would be a waste of resources. Move them in batches. There's still a lot of uncultivated land in the rear. Wuxia grunted in acknowledgement. He was about to pass on Jiang Pingji's order when he saw Feng Zhen's figure disappear from the tent. What did military advisor Feng come here for? The soldier said, Military advisor Feng came and ordered us to take inventory. Wuxia was even more curious. Feng Zhen was lazy. Why would he take on tasks outside of his responsibility? Inventory what? The soldier answered, Inventory the items of the widow of the garrison general of Hanchang Pass. Military advisor Feng said he wanted to return them to their owners. The corner of Wuxia's mouth twitched. He knew Feng Zhen wasn't that diligent. Is there a list? Let me see. Wuxia stretched out his hand. The soldier hurriedly passed the list to him. The items on the bamboo slips were all things that Feng Zhen wanted. There weren't many items. Other than clothes, jewelry, silks, and playthings, there were also a few deeds to land in the Zhangzhou region. There was almost no money. Overall, this list wasn't worth much. With Feng Zhen's current status, no one would say anything if he secretly kept these items. However, this kind of behavior was not a big deal, but it was also a stain on his reputation. Wuxia frowned. He opened the bamboo scroll and a piece of paper fell out. What's this? The soldier said, It's a note from Counselor Feng. He said that if the items on the list are exchanged for money, he will fill in the gaps. The corners of Wuxia's mouth twitched. He had wronged the prodigal son. Although the prodigal son was frivolous, he was also cautious and careful. How could he easily give others a handle on him? What time is it now? Why don't you look at the occasion when you're chasing after a beauty? After 2 or 3 years in the army, a Sao could compete with a Diaochan. From the start of the northern borderline's preparations for war until now, Feng Zhen had indeed been single for a long time, but this wasn't a reason for him to be moved by the sight of a beautiful and widowed royal sister, right? What do you mean by returning the item to its rightful owner? Wasn't he just taking the opportunity to make a good impression and see if there was a chance for him to take advantage of the situation? These words were a misunderstanding of Feng Zhen. In his opinion, admiring a beautiful woman was a form of enjoyment. Admiring her was one thing, but it did not mean that he wanted her for himself. To be honest, he quite admired his lord, but even if he was given 10 guts, he wouldn't dare to think about her. After fighting for so many years, it was rare for him to see a woman that suited his taste. Was he not allowed to take a few more glances? Lady Wan, take a look. Are there any that you missed out? Wuxia was flattered. No matter how ignorant she was, she knew that Feng Zhen was Jiang Pingji's strategist. How could she not be scared when he came in person? Feng Zhen's ability to handle matters was inversely proportional to his moral integrity. Wuxia took a quick look, and it seemed as if he was missing nothing. Governor Liu, thank you for your kind intentions. I'll have to trouble Mr. Feng to make another trip. Wuxia could not figure out whether Feng Zhen's actions were Jiang Pingji's instructions or something else, but seeing that he looked genial and not impatient, she thought that he should be easy to talk to. Wuxia deliberated and said, There is one thing that I would like to trouble Mr. Feng with. Feng Zhen dressed up carefully and restrained his unruly expression. He was still a man of good looks and appearance. Lady Wan, please speak. Wuxia thought for a while and said hesitantly, It's like this. I have 2 panzihua plants in my yard. My deceased mother planted a yard when she was alive. When I got married, my deceased mother gave me a seedling of the panzihua. I've raised them for many years, so I have some feelings for them. Panzihua? Feng Zhen was very knowledgeable. Naturally, he had heard of this ornamental plant. It was rumored that in some borderlands, the panzihua was used as a token of love between men and women. When a mother gave her daughter a panzihua on her wedding day, it was also a blessing. It was no wonder that Wuxia was reluctant. Lady Wan, you want to move the panzahua in your yard? If it was moved, it would be difficult for the plant to survive. Wan Xiu laughed. She seemed to be amused by Feng Zhen's imagination. She explained, the army is still at war. How can I let Mr. Feng allocate troops to dig panzahua for me? I just want to move a seedling from the main pole and keep it by my side as a comfort. Feng Zhen's brows relaxed. If it was just to take a seedling, it would not be difficult. Coincidentally, they were still resting and Feng Zhen was an idler. He volunteered to accompany Wan Xiu. Feng Zhen was not invisible. The news of him accompanying a beautiful woman out of the army camp quickly reached Jiang Pingji's ears. Damn. Can't you look at the timing when you're hitting on a girl? Jiang Pingji's expression was twisted. She broke the brush in her right hand. She was busy, but Feng Zhen only cared about hitting on a girl. What did humans do? Feng Zhen could not feel Jiang Pingji's resentment. He accompanied Wan Xiu to her original residence and went all the way to the inner yard. Indeed, there were several panzahua plants in the inner yard. Panzahua was not a flower. To be precise, it was a tree. According to historical records, the panzahua was 12 feet tall. It had 3 branches and looked like it would burn at night. Apart from that, there was also a record of cut paulownia wood. The flowers wither in February or March. Feng Zhen had heard of the panzahua, but it was his first time seeing it. Only a small number of influential people could keep it in their homes as ornamental plants. If Wan Xiu's deceased mother had not been born into a high status, she would not have been able to keep it in her backyard. Feng Zhen sat on the ground and craned his neck to look at Wan Xiu. After looking for a while, his neck was sore. He had not slept well for the past 2 days because of the war. Leaning against the tree trunk, he felt sleepy. Wan Xiu saw his movements and remembered that Feng Zhen had come all the way here with her. She felt grateful. She did not have anything valuable on her, and he did not care for it. Instead of giving him something valuable that would only make him a laughingstock, it was better to give him something practical. However, she was now a widowed woman. It was not appropriate for her to give Feng Zhen anything alone. She might as well give Jiang Pingji and the others their share. After processing the panzahua, you can use it to fill pillows. Then you can stuff some dried flowers to help you sleep. It will be more comfortable than a wooden pillow. Feng Zhen came to his senses and replied, it has such an effect. Chapter 1051. The two of them chatted on and off. Wan Xiu was a meticulous person. She quickly learned about Feng Zhen's basic situation from their conversation. He was a widower with a son. His eyes lit up when he talked about his son. He said he didn't like him, but he couldn't hide his pride. Wan Xiu looked calm on the surface, but she found it funny. She thought that someone who could work for the female lord must be cunning and cunning. She didn't expect Feng Zhen to be so innocent. Well, he was much cuter than those hypocritical and pretentious men. To prevent all the seedlings from dying, Wan Xiu moved 2 more seedlings and took good care of them. They should survive. Seeing that she was done, Feng Zhen got up and sent her back to the temporary tent of the women's camp. Wan Xiu lit an oil lamp and found the dried panzahua flowers she had dried last year. She made a few pillows overnight and stuffed the dried flowers into them. Thin, narrow, and tall wooden pillows were popular. The higher one's status, the better the wooden pillow. Wooden pillows were too tall, which caused many people to suffer from stiff pillows. Wan Xiu's mother was the same. Her mother dried the fallen panzahua flowers, picked the softest and thinnest ones, and stuffed them into the pillows as fillers. Wan Xiu didn't like wooden pillows. Her husband hadn't slept in her room for years, so she changed her pillow. As long as she was comfortable. Wan Xiu asked the female soldier to send a few pillows out that night, so as not to attract gossip. Jiang Pingji benefited from this. She hugged the soft pillow and sniffed it. It had a slight fragrance. What's in it? Smells good. Jiang Pingji was having her meal when she received it. Feng Zhen had been forced to work overtime. She watched him work to see if he had the time to flirt with girls. Feng Zhen saw the things in Jiang Pingji's arms and remembered what Wan Xiu had said yesterday. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. If nothing went wrong, he would see the same gift when he returned to the tent after finishing his task. Thinking about this, he felt that it was a pity. Alas, the one and only gift was shared and enjoyed by others. It was others who benefited from him, but it seemed like he benefited from the Lord. In the name of thanking Jiang Pingji, Wan Xiu gave Jiang Pingji and the strategists and generals whom Jiang Pingji valued highly. It should be panzahua, Feng Zhen replied. Panzahua? Using dried flowers as the pillow core, she's really thoughtful. Jiang Pingji didn't know what it was, but she thought the name sounded nice. Pinching the soft pillow, Jiang Pingji planned to try it at night. Xiu'er is really clever. This pillow can be changed. Jiang Pingji noticed that there was a rope on one side of the pillow. She pulled it open and realized that the two sides were not sewn together with a needle and thread. Instead, they were tied tightly with a long rope, but there were no gaps. Jiang Pingji untied the rope and took out the thing inside. She lowered her head and did not notice the huge change in the bullet screen in the live streaming room. Zuowanyan, you scared me to death. When I first heard of Panzihua, I thought a city was stuffed into my pillow. I'm Susu, how embarrassing. I misunderstood too. Junpo. Xiaodo Sak, I remember Panzihua is another name for the ancient kapok tree, right? Kapok tree. Most of the audience was still confused, wondering what kind of flower Panzihua was, but some of them had already figured it out. This thing is a kapok tree. I don't like to eat apple, I've seen it before. I remember that kapok was an ornamental plant in ancient times. It was only later processed and used. Glutinous rice ball soldier. Wow, does this mean that the streamer can grow cotton now? The productivity of ancient society was low, and the people had to worry about food, clothing, housing, and transportation for their entire lives. In terms of food, Jiang Pingji had already started researching sweet potatoes and sweet potatoes. These two things had a large yield and could feed many people. If she used high-yield cotton to solve the problem of clothing, when Jiang Pingji conquered the whole world, the prosperous dynasty would be just around the corner. The audience was excited, but there were also some top students who poured cold water on them. Lao Siji Lianmeng, cotton is the seed fiber of cotton plants in the mallow family. The cotton we often talk about should be fine wool cotton. It has high yield and good fiber quality. The kapok tree belongs to the kapok family. Its stamens can be used as raw material for fabrics. The kapok tree itself can also be used to make paper. Although the cotton wool of kapok can also be made into cotton-padded clothes, in terms of garment making and production, it is definitely not as good as the cotton we are familiar with. The flowers of the kapok tree are not equivalent to cotton. With the old driver's explanation, the enthusiasm of the audience was greatly dampened. However, when Jiang Pingji took out the stuffing inside, their enthusiasm soared again. There was kapok cotton wool in it, but there was also white cotton. Jiang Pingji picked up a ball and squeezed it. Felt good. In her era, real pure cotton clothes could only be worn by the rich. However, pure cotton clothes had all kinds of problems. As a soldier, Jiang Pingji could only wear it once or twice when she was on vacation. Normally, she wore the special military uniform. The military uniform was made from a certain extremely tough plant fiber in the galaxy. It was more comfortable to the touch than cotton, but it was difficult for a normal knife to cut it. Therefore, she did not know what cotton was called in ancient times, but she knew what this ball of stuff was used for. In her excitement, Jiang Pingji smashed the table in front of her. The sudden loud noise scared Feng Zhen so much that he could not even hold the brush steadily. He actually drew a long line of ink on the rice paper. What was she doing? Feng Zhen raised his head to look at his lord. Selfishly, he thought that the utensils his lord used should be made of copper or iron. Otherwise, changing them every few days was too wasteful. My lord? Feng Zhen asked weakly. Jiang Pingji suddenly stood up and said, You continue, I'll leave first. She patted her butt and left without a word. Feng Zhen, now that his lord was not around, could he sneak around and do something? Wuxia was sorting out the things that Feng Zhen had sent. She definitely could not go with the army. The biggest possibility was that Jiang Pingji would send her to her territory. With this thought in mind, Wuxia began to pack her luggage so that she would not be flustered when the time came. Hearing movement outside, Wuxia stretched her neck in surprise. Seeing that it was Jiang Pingji, she stood up and bowed. No need to be so polite. Jiang Pingji released her palm and asked directly, Where did you get this thing? Wuxia was shocked. She thought that there was something wrong with the ball of cotton wool. Her originally pale face became even paler. Could it be that someone had done something to the cotton wool? Someone had used her to frame Lu Shi? For a moment, all kinds of conspiracy theories and shady plots flashed through her mind. After a while, she said hesitantly, This is the tree that I planted in the courtyard. Is there anything wrong with it? Could it be that something had really happened? Jiang Pingji excitedly grabbed Wuxia's delicate hand. She asked excitedly, How many more? Where are the trees? Wuxia was confused, but she breathed a sigh of relief. Judging from Jiang Pingji's expression, it shouldn't be anything bad. She could rest assured. There are 3 of these trees in the courtyard. There are also 7 normal Pangji flowers. Wuxia did not know the name of the tree that grew the cotton wool, but it was mixed with the pangji flowers as part of the dowry. It should also be a type of pangji flower. At most, it looked a little strange. Chapter 1052. Take me to have a look. Jiang Pingji's eyes shone as she requested. Although it was a request, Wan Xiu had no room to refuse. Wan Xiu said, "The mansion is some distance away from the camp. Don't you want to send someone to prepare a carriage and guards first? You're the lord of a region. If you're alone, there might be an accident. They're still planted in the inner courtyard of the previous mansion. They can't run away." Jiang Pingji did not listen to these words. She pulled Wan Xiu out of the military tent and said to the orderly who was waiting outside, "Prepare the horse." She was a swift and decisive person. The cotton was an important matter related to the people's livelihood. She did not want to wait for a moment. She was too rough during the war. She did not know if she disturbed the few cotton plants. The orderly pulled White over. Jiang Pingji leaped onto the horse's back and extended her hand to Wan Xiu. Wan Xiu subconsciously extended her hand. She only felt Jiang Pingji lift her up the horse with force. Surprise! Before Wan Xiu could react, Jiang Pingji had already galloped out of the camp. A few orderly behind her mounted the horse and followed her. However, their lord's mount was too powerful. White had not unleashed its full power for a long time. It could not stop once it started galloping. When the few orderly and guards arrived at the destination, trembling with fear, Jiang Pingji had been looking at the few cotton plants for a long time. Wan Xiu was still in a state of shock. Her clothes were disheveled. Her hair was scattered on her shoulders. The pearls and jades that were used to hold her in place were gone. Looking at her, they thought that their lord had pinned them to the ground. "Why are you so late?" The panting soldier was dumbfounded and subconsciously asked for forgiveness. Jiang Pingji said, "Forget it. Go get a shovel and dig up all these trees. Remember not to damage the roots." Everyone was stunned for a moment before they reacted. They all went to find shovels. "Be careful. When you dig them out, the roots must be wrapped in soil," Jiang Pingji commanded the whole time. The soldiers were trembling with fear as if they were walking on thin ice. It was not that they were timid. Anyone who had seen Jiang Pingji kill enemies on the battlefield would be afraid of her. They were busy until sunset. The few trees were carefully moved out. To make it easier to move, they even found an extra-large pottery tank. Jiang Pingji drilled a few holes at the bottom of a few ceramic jars for easy watering in the future. The cotton was not tall. The 3 stalks were only 4 to 5 feet tall. The panzihua was slightly taller, but it was only a little more than 10 feet. Jiang Pingji heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that they had been moved out safely. Wan Xiu's curiosity was piqued. She knew that Jiang Pingji was a person who would do great things. If the thing was useless, Jiang Pingji would not be so nervous. "Is there anything unusual about this object?" Wan Xiu had been planting them for a few years. Apart from the unique pattern, the dried flowers could be used to fill pillows and mattresses, but there seemed to be no other use for them. Because of the cotton and the kapok tree, Jiang Pingji's impression of Wan Xiu went up another level. She said bluntly, "Of course there is. It can protect all the people in the world from the cold." Wan Xiu blinked her eyes. Of course she would not doubt Jiang Pingji's words, but these ornamental plants, were they really that powerful? So that the people of the world would not suffer from the cold? Even the reincarnation of a saint would not be able to do this, right? "You've done a great service." Jiang Pingji pressed her hands on both sides of her shoulders. "I can't thank you enough. If you have any needs, I will definitely satisfy them." Although they were separated by thick clothes and a mink fur cloak, she could still feel Jiang Pingji's slender hands. They were very strong and inexplicably gave her a sense of security that she had never felt before. Wan Xiu would not have believed such an ordinary promise in the past, but the person who said it was Jiang Pingji, so she believed it. "I can't accept such a promise. A gentleman's promise is worth the 5 mountains," Jiang Pingji emphasized. She did not say it casually. Wan Xiu's face suddenly turned red. She rolled her eyes at Jiang Pingji and said in an annoyed tone, So many years have passed, but your glib tongue has not deteriorated. You said that to Jingxian back then and now it's me. Who else do you want to say that to in the future?" She remembered clearly that when Jiang Pingji's gender was exposed, many noble ladies ridiculed her, and Wan Xiu was also jealous. She never thought that Jiang Pingji would use the same words to coax Wei Jingxian. "Really, can't you change it?" Jiang Pingji, Wan Xiu chuckled. Fine. I believe you. I don't ask for much. Just give me a place to stay." Jiang Pingji responded with an "oh," and said, Yes, I will definitely provide for you. Wuxia was overjoyed. Her smile these 2 days was more than the sum of the previous years. Although Jiang Pingji knew about cotton, she did not know how to raise it. Wuxia, on the other hand, had dealt with it for a few years and had more experience than her. So, Jiang Pingji asked her, "What plans do you have for the future?" Wuxia combed her messy long hair and smiled. "I am under your protection. Other than that, what other plans can I have?" Jiang Pingji shook her head and explained. "What I mean is, do you want to have a career in the future?" Wuxia's hand froze beside her ear. Did she hear wrongly? I have no strong points. I am just a woman. What career can I have? Jiang Pingji said, "You have a strong point that others don't have. After conquering Tsangzhou, I will have to rest for a few months. It is not the right way to be militaristic. I have to give the soldiers and people a chance to rest and recuperate. I plan to pick a few good fields to try planting these cotton. After accumulating experience and good seedlings, I will pick a suitable place to expand the scale of planting." There is also news from Wanzhou. Huijuan's spinning wheel has made a breakthrough. The spinning speed is extremely fast. If the two are combined, who knows how many people will benefit. Wuxia was stunned on the spot. Her mind was in a mess. Although she did not understand, Wuxia knew that Jiang Pingji would not lie to her about such things. This was definitely a good thing. Before Wuxia married, she was the daughter of a noble family. After she married, she became a noble lady. Her marriage was not satisfactory, but the quality of her life was good. It was indeed difficult for her to be tormented by cotton planting. However, Wuxia had experienced a disaster. She knew that in troubled times, without anyone to protect her, her life would not be any better. Even if there were no benefits to it, she would not refuse Jiang Pingji's suggestion. On the other side, Feng Zhen knew that his lord had left the army camp on horseback. This frightened him. There were still remnants of the enemy's troops outside. If his lord was careless and encountered some rascals, he would be in trouble. Feng Zhen was anxious. He arranged for a group of people to escort him to Jiang Pingji. The warhorse's jolting made his buttocks hurt. He hurried and arrived just in time to catch a few soldiers carrying pots of cotton and kapok trees. They were moving them to the carriage. "Oh my, weren't these Lady Wan's treasures? His lord brought Lady Wan here and even asked people to dig out these trees. What was she trying to do?" Feng Zhen dismounted from the horse in a sorry state. He raised his hand to fling the hair tie around his neck to the back of his head. Guess what he saw? He saw his lord and Wuxia walking out of the courtyard side by side. The former was talking and laughing, while the latter was timidly hanging her head and wringing her sleeves. Wuxia's hair was loose and her clothes seemed to have been tidied up. Feng Zhen was shocked. *CK. Wei Ci, Wei Zixiao. Chapter 1053. Feng Zhen tidied up his appearance a little and stepped forward to salute. "Greetings, my lord." Even though his heart was in a mess, he was still gentle and calm on the surface. Jiang Pingji looked at Feng Zhen with a faint smile. Did the sun rise from the west today? How could the wanton and unrestrained Feng Zhen be so dignified? Feng Zhen hadn't adjusted his breathing rhythm, probably because he was in such a hurry. Feng Zhen's cheeks were pale from the cold wind, and his lips were blue. His body wasn't healthy, so he looked weak, helpless, and pitiful. "Before I left, I've instructed you to do so. Zisher, why didn't you stay in the camp? Why did you come here?" Jiang Pingji teased him with a smile. "Besides, the wind is so strong outside. If your weak body gets blown away, I'll have to find someone to get you back." Feng Zhen choked and almost choked on his breath. If he wasn't worried about his lord, why would he ride a horse here? Galloping on a horse, the cold wind hitting his face hurt. "I heard that my lord left the camp without anyone. I was afraid that an accident would happen, so I dared to disobey military orders. Please punish me, my lord." Jiang Pingji's teeth ached when she heard this. Usually, Feng Zhen would try to smooth things over. How could he plead guilty so seriously? Pretend. Keep pretending. You had good intentions. How can I really punish you? Jiang Pingji said. But don't do it again. Feng Zhen cupped his hands and smiled. Yes. Jiang Pingji secretly curled her lips. She couldn't really embarrass Feng Zhen in front of Wuxia, otherwise she wouldn't let Feng Zhen off so easily. "My lord, are you taking these panzahua plants away?" Feng Zhen glanced at Wuxia. You really have tender feelings for the fairer sex." In comparison, he was only accompanying someone to transplant the seedlings. No matter how one looked at it, he seemed to be at a disadvantage. Tender feelings for the fairer sex. Jiang Pingji said. Not only do I want to move these trees away, but I also want to send some people to Xiuer's mother's house. Feng Zhen's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't be blamed for letting his imagination run wild. Was his lord going to meet her in-laws? Even though Feng Zhen didn't say it out loud, Jiang Pingji could see through his thoughts. If Wan Xiuer hadn't been there, she would have taught Feng Zhen a lesson and let him know why flowers were so red. Seeing Jiang Pingji's gloomy expression, Feng Zhen suddenly realized that he had misunderstood. In order to turn the tables, Feng Zhen asked with a serious expression. His voice was steady and powerful, and it was obvious that he was a serious person. My lord, is there anything wrong with these trees? If it wasn't for meeting his in-laws, then the problem should be with these trees. Jiang Pingji said, the people in the north can use wool to weave sweaters to survive the winter. Those who are better off can burn coal. However, if large quantities of sweaters were to be shipped to the south, the cost of each piece of clothing would inevitably skyrocket, and many commoners would not be able to afford them. There were many fertile fields in the south, which were not suitable for breeding woolly sheep. However, the cotton produced by these trees could solve this problem. This cotton wool can be made into silk and woven into cloth. It can also be used as a filler to achieve the purpose of warmth. Tell me, isn't it very important? Jiang Pingji smiled as she placed the ball of cotton wool in Feng Zhen's hands. The cotton wool still carried the warmth of her palm. When it came to the livelihood of the people, Feng Zhen didn't dare to be mischievous. He gently pulled the cotton wool and even twirled it between his fingers. Is this really possible? In a split second, various thoughts flashed through his mind. Many nobles have brought this thing to play with. I wonder if it's easy to raise? If it's not easy to raise, even if it can be woven into clothes, commoners won't be able to afford it. Also, how much fertile land does this plant take up? If it takes up too much fertile land, it will definitely reduce the production of grain. How will the commoners survive then? If one plant is planted, how much cotton wool can be harvested in a year? How many clothes and bedding can be made into? If a year's hard work isn't enough to cover the cost, then it's better not to plant it at all. Feng Zhen considered everything. Apart from these questions, he still had a string of doubts. It was a good thing that cotton wool could be woven into clothes, but there were still many unresolved problems. Feng Zhen might be unreliable normally, but he was very charming when he was serious. Didn't he see that the audience in the live stream was cheering for him? When Wan Xiuer heard Feng Zhen's question, her burning heart cooled a little. Yes, it seemed that she had been too optimistic just now. There were many things that she hadn't considered. At that moment, Jiang Pingji's voice reached her ears. Because of this, we have to send someone to Xiuer's home to take a look. I think we can find more useful information there. Although there was a live stream, the two worlds were completely different. Not only was the distribution of land and sea different, but even the animals and plants were different. According to the situation in the audience's previous world, it was impossible for a crop like cotton to appear. Of course, there were only a few differences. Most of them were similar. She could use the information provided by the audience as a reference, but it couldn't be used as a final conclusion. Seeing that his lord was rational, Feng Zhen didn't continue to pour cold water on her. Instead, he pinched the ball of cotton wool with great interest. If it can really solve the problem of clothing for the commoners, who knows how many commoners would be willing to set up a longevity tablet for Lady Wan and offer incense to her 3 meals a day. Wan Xiuer's cheeks flushed red. How can I be worthy? Mr. Feng's words are too much. Even if there's merit, it's the work of the magistrate of Liuzhou. Many nobles have this plant in their backyards, but no one has said that it can weave cloth and make clothes for the benefit of the commoners. Since ancient times, how many nobles had been unable to make the commoners set up longevity tablets on their own? How could it be her turn? Feng Zhen smiled and said, Lady Wan's thoughts are exquisite, and her words are pleasant to the ear. No wonder my lord cares for her so much. Jiang Pingji coughed softly, interrupting their conversation. This matter shouldn't be publicized. We must send a few reliable people to handle it. There can't be any mistakes. In addition, it's not suitable for Xiuer to follow the army into battle. Remember to send her to Wanzhou to settle down. If these two matters aren't handled well, I'll definitely settle accounts with you. Feng Zhen cupped his hands and bowed seriously. Yes. This matter concerned the commoner's livelihood, so it had to be handled properly no matter what. The army didn't have much time to rest, so this matter had to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Wan Xiuer, who was standing to the side, heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had anticipated this and packed her luggage in advance. Otherwise, she would definitely be in a mess. Feng Zhen was nimble and efficient. Everything had been arranged early the next morning. Lady Wan, I have a presumptuous request. A trace of surprise flashed in Wan Xiu's eyes, but she said, Please speak, Mr. Feng. Feng Jin took out a box. It looked heavy. I've been separated from my youngest son, Feng Yi, for a long time. I'm ashamed that I haven't done my duty as a father to raise him all these years. I'm ashamed of myself. Mr. Feng has his own difficulties. Your son will surely understand, Wan Xiu said. Does Mr. Feng want me to pass this to your son? Feng Jin nodded, but his expression showed that he was in a difficult position. Wan Xiu said, Has Mr. Feng encountered a difficult problem? Chapter 1054. This Mr. Feng has a loving father's heart. Wan Xiu thought of Feng Zhen's request and her heart softened. She was disgusted by her dead husband, but she loved children. If her aborted child could have been born, would it be enlightened by now? Unfortunately, fate was too thin. Other than her, there were also female soldiers in the carriage who took care of her and ensured her safety. The female soldiers had never interacted with Feng Zhen, so they didn't know his nature. However, people like to imagine things. If they liked someone, they couldn't help but label them as good. Military advisor Feng was so wise, he must be a loving father. Feng Yi, who didn't know the truth, could only say, hee hee. A month later, Feng Yi received a box that her father had mailed from thousands of miles away. There was nothing else in the box except for all kinds of delicate things. It was Feng Zhen's letters to Feng Yi. No more, no less. There were 24 letters in total, and each letter had 4 to 5 pages. They felt very heavy to the touch. Feng Zhen didn't care about being a father and often joked with his son. Although the father and son were separated more often than not, their relationship was much better than that of other fathers and sons in feudal families. Thank you, madam. Feng Yi, who still looked young, thanked Wan Xiu. He was gentle, polite, and well-mannered. As Wan Xiu looked at the handsome young man in front of her, she had a better impression of him. Her son was so cute and polite. As a father, Feng Zhen was no different. Sigh. If it weren't for this world, Feng Yi would have stayed by Feng Zhen's side and become the father and son that others envied. Wan Xiu saw that Feng Yi's face was weak and seemed to be born with a congenital defect. Her heart softened. Weak but full of spiritual energy, like a beautiful jade with a spirit of heaven and earth. Who wouldn't like it? Wan Xiu smiled. What are you thanking me for? If not for Mr. Feng's arrangements, I might not have reached Wanzhou safely. Feng Yi saw that she looked tired. She must have been tired from the long journey. Thus he asked thoughtfully, Madam, have you found a place to stay since you came here? Wan Xiu thought about it and shook her head. She hadn't found a place to stay. Feng Yi said, If you don't mind, you can stay here for a few days. His father was often not at home, so the inner courtyard was empty. It was not a problem for his wife to live there. It was already late, so it would not be appropriate to look for a guest house to stay for the night. Madam has helped my father greatly. As a son, how can I neglect my benefactor? This lad knows some people and can help Madam inquire about the nearby houses that can be rented. You're a woman, it's always inconvenient for you to be outside. Why don't you stay in my humble abode for the time being and wait for me to find a house to rent or a place to live for a long time before moving out? It will save me the trouble of going back and forth. Wan Xiu blinked and looked at the young boy in front of her in surprise. His height wasn't even as high as his chest. His words were reasonable and he did things in an orderly manner. He could already see his future demeanor. Isn't this too troublesome? Feng Yi said, Father isn't at home and there are only a few servants and maids to take care of him. It won't be troublesome. Wan Xiu suddenly remembered Feng Zhen's request and sighed in her heart. What a pitiful child. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you. Feng Yi nodded. He asked for leave from the master of the Golden Scale Academy, skipped the riding and archery class in the afternoon, and brought Wan Xiu to his home. When they arrived at the Feng Manor, Wan Xiu felt a headache coming on. Was she taking care of this child, or was this child taking care of her? Feng Yi arranged a separate and clean guest house for her, and sent the housekeeper to a broker to pick out maids to serve her, as well as servants to do rough work. Apart from these, she also ordered people to prepare daily necessities, and had the tailor come over to take measurements and make new clothes. It was a mess, but this child seemed to be very familiar with it and did it with ease. The more this was so, the more Wan Xiu's heart ached for Feng Yi. Who wouldn't like an obedient, sensible and intelligent child? Wan Xiu even imagined a tragic scene where her father wasn't around and the child had to shoulder the burden of the manor alone. Dalong, the madam in the guest house? The housekeeper asked hesitantly. Feng Yi opened Feng Zhen's letter and read it word by word. Starting from the earliest date, most of the letters were about longing, experiences along the way and interesting events in the army. At father's age, Feng Yi glanced at the housekeeper out of the corner of his eye and said calmly, "It's time for him to settle down." The housekeeper choked. Once again he deeply realized who the master of the Feng manor was. This, Feng Yi said, "It's not right for a man at 30 to still indulge in debauchery. It would be great if someone could control him." The housekeeper was speechless. Suddenly he felt that the roles of the father and son in the family had been reversed. Feng Yi was the old father who was heartbroken by his rebellious son. But master might not have this intention. The housekeeper said weakly. Feng Yi smiled and said with certainty, "Just now I tested the madam. She had a very good impression of my father. She even praised him as a pure and upright gentleman. Steward, if my father didn't have such an intention, do you think he would be associated with these 8 words? It was because he had an interest that he pretended to be." The housekeeper finally understood and nodded with emotion. This was probably the rumored, "No one knows a son better than his father?" After thinking for a while, the housekeeper still didn't realize what was wrong with his words. If Feng Zhen knew that his son understood him so well, he would definitely be extremely gratified. After sending off one Xior's convoy, he gathered his thoughts and focused his energy on the battle. 2 days had passed. Huang Song and Jiang Pingji had also dealt with the division of the captives. Feng Jin and Wei Xi were in charge of negotiations on Jiang Pingji's side, while Qing Jing and Ye Sun were in charge of Huang Song's side. Because of Huang Song's approval and hints, the two of them didn't take a strong stance on this issue. This was a situation that both sides would be satisfied with, but someone was unhappy. When Yuan Xian heard that his lord Huang Song had given up most of the money and didn't argue when it came to the distribution of the captives, military supplies and property, he was suddenly dissatisfied. It wasn't that he was dissatisfied with Huang Song's modesty, but he suspected that someone was biased towards Jiang Pingji and was helping an outsider. Who was this person? Nye Sun's face appeared in Yuan Xian's mind. Once this thought came to mind, there was an additional thorn in his heart. He didn't have a good impression of Nye Sun. Now that there was another barrier, their relationship was like fire and water. This matter alarmed Huang Song. He came forward to mediate. The two of them seemed to have forgotten their differences on the surface, but in private they were even more hostile. "Don't let me get hold of your weakness." Yuan Xian looked at Nye Sun and Meng Heng from afar. When the two of them spoke, the atmosphere was harmonious and harmonious. The thorn in his heart became more and more obvious. He snorted coldly and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Nye Sun's back was facing Yuan Xian, so he didn't feel it, but Meng Heng noticed it. Meng Heng naturally shifted his gaze away. His expression was normal and he didn't reveal any flaws. He even bowed gratefully to Nye Sun. Chapter 1055. Although he had ulterior motives, the gratitude in Meng Heng's words was genuine. His wife was pregnant, so it was reasonable for her to not follow the army. How to settle her down became a difficult problem. If he let his wife travel thousands of miles to Wanzhou, her body wouldn't be able to withstand the torment, and there might be problems along the way. After thinking about it, the only option was to stay in Heda County to nurture the fetus. When Nye Sun learned of this, he privately suggested to Meng Heng to let his wife move to Nye Sun's mansion so that she could keep him company. When Huang Song went to war, Nye Sun would definitely follow him to the front lines. In this way, it was inevitable that he wouldn't be able to take care of his wife, Zhu Qingning. If the two pregnant women lived together, they could take care of each other and wouldn't be in a difficult situation. Nye Sun's suggestion was exactly what someone wanted. It was nothing. No need to thank me. Nye Sun smiled as he helped Meng Heng up. He wasn't unaware that Yuan Xian was targeting him. He also wanted to distance himself from Meng Heng to protect himself. However, established relationships couldn't be broken so easily. His lord, Huang Song, and his lord, Meng Heng, were in the honeymoon phase of the alliance. Nye Sun couldn't forcefully shut him out. Over time, not only did their relationship not become distant, but it also became more intimate. It wasn't exactly good to say that they had a good relationship. It was a very normal friendship between gentlemen. Nye Sun sat upright, unafraid of rumors and slander. If Yuan Xian used this as an excuse to make things difficult for him, Nye Sun wasn't one to be trifled with. The two armies rested for a day and everyone had different thoughts. It seemed that this turbulent river of pine hid countless undercurrents and schemes. The two armies rested for a few days, and the news that Hanchang Pass had been breached reached the ears of the Zhangzhou reinforcements. What did you say? The reinforcements general was having fun with beauties. The tent was filled with the strong smell of alcohol, and empty wine jars were scattered below. Sitting in his arms was a voluptuous woman with a half-exposed body. Behind him, there was also a flirtatious woman massaging his shoulders. His left and right arms were wrapped around two drunken and laughing women. His upper body was bare, revealing his muscles. If one didn't look at the decorations around him, one would think that the man was in some brothel. Where was the atmosphere of a military camp? Hearing the messenger's report, the general was furious. When he understood what the messenger said, he was scared out of his wits. He pushed away the beauties in his arms and pushed away the one in his arms. The beauty who was massaging his shoulders was so scared that she didn't dare to move. The sudden turn of events caused the four women's beautiful faces to turn pale. The messenger did not dare to raise his head, afraid that he would see something he was not supposed to see. After all, no man would like his woman to be seen naked by another man, even if the woman was just a plaything. Hanchang Pass has been breached. Lu Shi and Huang Song's armies are stationed on the banks of the river Song. They seem to be planning to cross the river. Already broken? When was it broken? The messenger stammered out the time. The general was so angry that he waved his hand, and the bamboo slips and wine bottles on the table fell to the ground. Why didn't anyone tell me about such a big thing? How many days has it been since Froschchang Pass was breached and he only received the news? If this news spread to Meng County in Song Prefecture, then, thinking of the possible consequences, the general's strong body shivered. Even if there were a few charcoal basins in the tent, it couldn't dispel the coldness in his heart. There was no reason for him not to be afraid. Meng Zhan received the request for help from the defending general of Froschchang Pass, so he was sent to support the dangerous pass as soon as possible. However, he didn't take Lu Shi and Huang Song seriously. Froschchang Pass was one of the best natural strongholds. The pass was full of soldiers. How could it be breached so easily? With this thought in mind, he led the troops and stopped from time to time. They marched for less than 8 hours in the day, and occasionally stopped to drink and have fun. Originally, they thought they would arrive in half a month. Although they were a few days late, it wouldn't delay the important military affairs. They didn't expect that the 10 days' journey would take them almost a month, and Froschchang Pass had been breached. It's over, it's over. The general was so scared that his forehead was sweating. Even the charcoal basins in the tent couldn't warm his heart. Where are Lu Shi and the others now? Did they cross the river Song? The general knew that he had delayed the important matter. If he was caught by Meng Zhan, even 10 heads wouldn't be enough for him to chop off. For now, he had to find a way to make up for his mistakes. The messenger had a complicated expression on his face. If the general still had a brain, he should know that he had asked a stupid question. It turned out that the other party didn't listen to a single word of what he had just reported. The Huang and Lu armies have their backs to Froschchang Pass. They are stationed near the river Song. They haven't crossed the river yet. The general was relieved. It was good that they hadn't crossed the river. He still had a chance to win by relying on the danger of the river Song. There was a reason why he was so confident. Most of Jiang Pingji's troops came from the north. There were many landlubbers in the north. Even if they could swim, they could only paddle. Huang Song made his fortune in Haozhou. Haozhou was located at the border between the north and the south. His situation was better than Jiang Pingji's. The former was a landlubber while the latter was a dabbler. No matter how strong they were on land, they were still rookies in the water. The river Song was rapid. If the entire army crossed the river, how much combat power could they maintain when they reached the shore? You said that the 2 ignorant kids are stationed near the river Song? The messenger nodded. That's right. As soon as he finished speaking, the general burst into laughter. He seemed to be in a good mood. There was no trace of the haze and anger from before. The messenger was dumbfounded. How could he still laugh at such a time? The general smiled and said, "It's said in military books that if we fight near the water, we must go further away. On one hand, we can lure the enemy to cross. On the other hand, we can make it seem like the enemy. If we want to fight, we can't meet the enemy near the water for fear that we won't be able to cross. If we don't want to fight, we can block the water so that the enemy can't help us. If the enemy leads troops to cross the water to fight, we can attack them when they are halfway across the water." The 2 ignorant kids, Huang and Lu, don't even know this bit of military strategy. What's there to be afraid of? If they fought near the river, experienced generals would set up their camps further away from the river. There were 2 advantages to doing so. On one hand, it could lure the enemy to cross the river. On the other hand, it could dispel the enemy's suspicions. If the enemy fell for it, they could attack them when they were halfway across the river. Huang Song and Lu Shi had set up their camps near the river Song. Would he be so stupid as to fall for it and give them a chance to attack when they were halfway across? The messenger didn't know how to respond. He wasn't very educated. He only understood a little of what the general said. However, looking at his general's confident look, he should be very confident, right? The general ordered the whole army to speed up and try to reach the river Song before the Huang and Lu armies crossed the river. Little did he know that Jiang Pingji and Huang Song had changed their minds. The reason for their change of mind was also quite helpless. Jiang Pingji knew that shipbuilding technology in ancient times was backward, but she never expected it to be this backward. This kind of boat. Before crossing the river Song, the hull has already been broken into pieces, right? She mocked them bluntly. Although it wasn't that serious, it wasn't far off. They could cross the river, but they couldn't count on them to fight on the water. Chapter 1056. Jiang Pingji was irascible, and the audience in the streaming room was extremely disappointed. They thought they would see a luxurious battleship that was comparable to an aircraft carrier in a historical drama, but, Guangxia Moshi, what can this wooden boat be used for? The host has tens of thousands of soldiers and horses here. It's impossible for them to disembark in one go with this kind of ship. They might need to do it in 4 or 5 waves. How long would it take to make a round trip? This kind of boat, is it a joke? Jiao. If I remember correctly, in the ancient history of our side during the Three Kingdoms period, there were ships that could carry 3,000 people. Looking at the host's social background, it should be equivalent to the Wei, Jin, Southern and Northern dynasties period? There's no reason for their shipbuilding skills to be so bad, right? Space drifting bottle? I think it's a geographical problem. After all, this place is closer to the north. Most of the battles are fought on land. There's not enough environment for water battles. It took a lot of money and effort to build a ship, and it was rarely used in battle, so there was no such thing. Want to find a good name is hard. I saw the live stream earlier. The host said that Sangzhou has developed land and water routes, so there is a lot of business and the economy is very prosperous. Most of the ships on the river were commercial ships. Crossing the river was not a problem, but fighting in the water was not enough. It had only been a few years since they entered the troubled times, and Songha had been occupied by the Meng family of Zhangzhou for a long time. There seemed to be no wars, so how could they prepare so many military ships? The audience expressed their opinions. The boats were fine for crossing the river, but it was too difficult for them to fight in the water. Many of the audience members were thinking even further. They had yet to conquer Zhangzhou, but they were already thinking about the complicated waters of the south. Baby Bao Bao, why don't you cross the river at the narrowest point? Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows in deep thought. Feng Zhen pointed at the topographic map on the table. The gorge river in the middle and lower reaches of the Song River. The river here is wide and the water is gentle. Why don't we take a detour to cross the river here and attack Zhangzhou in a roundabout way? There are many crossings here, there should be enough boats for our army to cross the river. At this point, Feng Zhen furrowed his brows. His eyes flashed and he said meaningfully, furthermore, Gorge River is adjacent to Haozhou and Qinzhou. The terrain is excellent. If my lord chooses this place in the future, they could attack Zhangzhou in advance and plot against Qinzhou in retreat. As for why Feng Zhen didn't choose to cross the Pine River at its narrowest point. The Song River was rapid, and the narrower the place, the stronger the current. Who knew how many submerged reefs were hidden at the bottom of the river? If one used this kind of boat to cross the river, the possibility of success was basically zero. The boat would capsize before the person could even reach the shore. Feng Zhen was a playboy. Not only did he have a wild personality, but he also had a big appetite. He wanted both Zhangzhou and Qinzhou. Jiang Pingji squinted her eyes and said with a smile, "A gentleman doesn't take what others like." Feng Zhen understood. "My lord, are you worried that Prefecture Overseer Huang is also thinking of starting from Gorge River?" "I'm not worried. He'll definitely do that." Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Bogeo also has his own thoughts." After a while she smiled and said, "Bogeo has helped us block the Meng family of Zhangzhou for nearly a year. If he chooses to go through the river gorge, how can we compete with him? What's more, the Meng family of Zhangzhou came for me. Bogeo's willingness to help was out of kindness, but his refusal to help was part of his duty. Instead of damaging the alliance between the two sides, it's better to take the initiative. We'll go around the upper reaches of the Pine River, this way we'll have less pressure." Feng Zhen did not speak, but the others in the tent understood Jiang Pingji's intentions. She seemed to be retreating, but in fact she was advancing by retreating. Huang Song wanted Qinzhou, so she gave it to him. However, Songzhou was under the control of the Meng family, so Huang Song should not even think about touching it. Meng Heng said casually, "If we go around the upper reaches of the Pine River, the pressure on our army to transport food will be reduced." Jiang Pingji's forces were concentrated in the north, so they basically relied on land to transport food. If they went by the river gorge, they would have to go south along the Pine River, which would cause the logistics to take too long to transport food. It was highly likely that they would be intercepted by the enemy. When the forces in the north fought on the water, they not only competed with the resources of both sides, but also with the logistics. If the logistics could not keep up, the main force of the vanguard would enter the enemy's territory alone, and they would not be able to return. On the contrary, if they went around the upper reaches of the Pine River, that would be Jiang Pingji's northern territory, and the transportation of food would be guaranteed to the greatest extent. Meng Heng said in a low voice, "Moreover, the river gorge is closer to the south, where the climate is humid and there is a lot of mud in the shallow waters. It's easy for the troops to adapt to the climate, and if they are unlucky they may even contract diseases. Although the river gorge has its terrain to worry about, it is of little value to my lord." Jiang Pingji's goal was to annex Songzhou. If she could get Songzhou, she would have two places that were rich in warhorses, which would be of great strategic significance. In comparison, Qinzhou, with its flat terrain and abundant resources, was not as attractive to her. Feng Jin understood the crux of the matter. He looked at Meng Heng with admiration, not the slightest bit unhappy that his suggestion had been rejected. "Once we take Songzhou, my lord can then plot to conquer Langia, Hejian, Gaoi and other counties. You will be able to connect the entire northern territory, and you will have the momentum of a whale swallowing a tiger. It is also possible that you will be able to conquer the world." When Meng Heng said this, his tone was calm, but the content of his words could not help but make people excited. Compared to the small profits at hand, it was better to take a long-term view and make strategic arrangements. For Jiang Pingji, Songzhou was more important than Qinzhou. If she did not take Songzhou, when Huang Song took Qinzhou and then encroached on Songzhou's territory, Jiang Pingji would be forced into a passive state. After a round of discussion, everyone had a plan in mind. The audience was confused. Although they didn't quite understand, they understood one thing. Yuntian Weeping Rain, the two families are still in an alliance, but the streamer has already started scheming against Huang Song? Poor baby Huang Song. Meeting a two-faced friend, he did not die an unjust death. Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a cold smile. She schemed against Huang Song while the alliance was still in place? He also schemed against her, so she just returned the favor. She was a traitor, so there was no need to talk about morality and righteousness. Just as Jiang Pingji expected, after receiving the news that Songzhou's reinforcements had arrived on the other side of the Song River, Huang Song suggested to her to split up and cross the river. Jiang Pingji took the initiative to suggest leading the troops north along the Song River, while Huang Song wanted to lead the troops south along the Song River and attack Songzhou from the north and south. Regarding this arrangement, both armies had no objections. In order not to arouse the enemy's suspicions, the two armies withdrew overnight. As for Hanchang Pass, Huang Song left some troops there and rearranged the arrangement, in case the Meng family of Songzhou besieged Wei to rescue Zhao. Before the army withdrew their camp, Huang Song expressed his feelings and said to Feng Ju, "Don't you want to go and take a look? It's good to say a few words. If we miss this opportunity, we may not have another chance in the future." Huang Song was suspicious by nature, but he was also sincere to those he truly trusted. Feng Ju had been working for him for many years and had meticulously schemed for him. How could he be indifferent? Feng Ju's eyes darkened and his tone was distant. "There's no need. Second brother is not an indecisive woman. How can you not distinguish between public and private matters?" Back then, during the earthquake in Shangjing, he had told Feng Jin, when they met again, life and death were fated. There was no need to show mercy. Although the Meng family of Songzhou was annoying, the existence of this force balanced the relationship between Huang Song and Jiang Pingji. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Once there was no common enemy, internal strife was not far away. Huang Song sighed softly, but this was not the only thing that worried him. Chapter 1057. Huang Song was not in a good mood for the past 2 days. Humans were not plants. How could they be emotionless? He did not have Jiang Pingji's rich experience and strong beliefs. He also did not have Feng Ju and Feng Jin's calm and ruthless rationality. He knew that they were different paths, but when he thought of his youth he always felt a sense of melancholy. If the world was peaceful, how many lives would be spared? However, he was Huang Song, a warlord who had come from humble beginnings to where he was today. Even if his heart was a little soft, he would not be soft-hearted when it was time to be cold and hard. At most, he would complain a little when he was emotional. What if I lose? Huang Song looked calm, but when facing Jiang Pingji, he had always been in a weak and passive position. When he wanted to tell himself over and over again that he could do it, attacked Sangzhou from the top and Qinzhou from the bottom. When he occupied 3 states, he would be qualified to challenge Jiang Pingji, who dominated the north. However, would things really go so smoothly? Huang Song was confused for a moment. He did not dare to tell anyone else about this confusion and lack of confidence. He did not even dare to reveal it to his wife and son. He even kept his mouth shut when he slept at night, for fear that he would reveal it when he talked in his sleep. Huang Song felt very guilty after saying such depressing words to Feng Ju, but he could not help but confide in him. He was not afraid of death. He was afraid that he could not bear such heavy expectations. Feng Ju stared at him unblinkingly with his deep, pitch-black eyes. Just when Huang Song thought that the other party would be disappointed, Feng Ju smiled and said, "If we lose, Ju will accompany you to battle the Azura Hell again. There will not be another Lu Lanting there." Huang Song was stunned when he heard this. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His whole body was filled with emotions and his limbs and bones felt numb. Feng Ju said, "My lord, do you feel a lot of pressure recently?" Huang Song nodded. He had not felt anything before, but he inadvertently turned his head and watched Jiang Pingji's army disappear into the night. He suddenly had a myriad of thoughts. He had thought too much without paying attention. He had imposed a heavy psychological shackle on himself. It was as if after this farewell, the friendship of their youth could never return. Bogeo, you have to know that you did your best. This is not only a sign of respect for yourself, but also for her. If Lu Lanting is the final victor, she will have won it with her own hands. Her opponent was not soft-hearted and indulged her. Feng Ju called Huang Song by his courtesy name. Ever since the two of them became ruler and subject, this kind of intimate address became less and less frequent. Huang Song was just feeling it on the spur of the moment. After hearing Feng Ju's words, his slightly heated mind also calmed down. As the cold wind blew, the rising sun slowly rose from the horizon. The increasingly dazzling morning light dispersed the hesitation and haze in Huang Song's heart. In front of Feng Ju, Huang Song was still a little emotional. Once he entered the Lord's state, he became a person who did not show his emotions. It was difficult for others to pry into his true emotions from his face. Just as he was adjusting his mood, his uncle Yuanxin said that he had something important to report. "What is it?" Huang Song thought that something strange had happened ahead, and his eyebrows furrowed slightly. Yuan Xang cupped his fists and bowed. He looked around to make sure that there was no suspicious person nearby before he whispered what had happened. "Yesterday I found out that Nie Qingyun and Lu Shi's subordinate, Meng Heng, are very close. They have a close relationship." Huang Song's eyebrows twitched. His slightly soothing mood was once again disturbed by this uncle. How many times had he snitched on him? The two of them are dragons and phoenixes among men. What's so strange about them being close friends? Huang Song was also puzzled. This uncle of his was good at fighting and was very brave. He was good in every way, but he just couldn't get along with Nie Sun. He had personally come forward to mediate the conflict between the two, but he did not expect Yuanxin to snitch on him. He was friends with Lord Meng Heng. Qing Jing and Feng Zhen were even pen pals who had met each other. Feng Ju and Feng Jin were brothers born from the same womb. What was wrong with Nie Sun and Meng Heng talking for a while? Huang Song had a good temper with his clansmen, but that was not always the case. If his bottom line was crossed, he would also get angry. However, Yuan Xen said, "Lord, I suspect that Nie Sun and Meng Heng's relationship is not as simple as just acquaintances." Huang Song secretly took a deep breath and asked, "Why do you say that?" Yuan Xen puffed out his chest and said confidently, "I found out that Nie Qingyun once addressed Meng Heng as big brother to his wife Yeu." Huang Song was speechless. His first reaction was not big brother, or whatever, but anger. Yuan Xan had actually planted someone in Nie Sun's residence? Huang Song was so angry that he laughed. With a fake smile he asked, "And then? What's wrong with calling him big brother?" This time, it was Yuan Xian's turn to hesitate. He did not know if he should say it. After some thought, it was better to say it. The two of them are most likely sworn brothers. Huang Song was so shocked by this conclusion that he almost fell off his horse. Sworn brothers? What sworn brothers? It used to refer to sworn brothers, but now it was another form of address for a man and a man. Yuan Xian actually suspected that Nie Sun and Meng Heng had such a relationship. Huang Song was shocked by Yuan Xian's black hole of imagination. His expression did not change, but his heart obviously could not wrap itself around it. Yuan Xian, however, had his own inference. If Nie Sun and Meng Heng had no relationship at all, why did the former call the latter Big Brother? The two of them were not brothers. One was from the Nie family of Zhongzhou, and the other was from the Meng family of Dongqing. They were completely unrelated. Nowadays the world liked men. Not only did high officials and nobles like it, it was also a custom in many places. Regardless of whether they were rich or poor, they were all related. The older ones were sworn brothers and the younger ones were sworn brothers. When the sworn brother married into the younger brother's family, the younger brother's parents doted on him like a son-in-law. In the future, the younger brother's living expenses and marriage expenses would all be taken care of by the sworn brother. The lovers would get married after the age of 30 and still sleep together like a married couple. Look, many people were used to this and even treated the sworn brother as a son-in-law. When the sworn brother married a wife, they would even give him a certain amount of expenses. However, Nie Sun and Meng Heng were both married. Their wives were pregnant, but they actually had such a despicable relationship. Huang Song struggled to climb out of this dark hole in his brain. Uncle, you are not a married woman in the backyard. Why are you so talkative? Huang Song's words were already impolite. Yuanxin's face turned red and he felt really awkward. Qingyun is Song's confidant and a noble gentleman. How would he be interested in men? Apart from that, you should restrain yourself and quickly wipe out your spies in Qingyun's backyard. Qingyun didn't stay in the backyard, but he will eventually find out. Huang Song's scolding made Yuan Xian so embarrassed that he wanted to die. He had lost 40 years of face. He wouldn't hate Huang Song, but he would blame it on Nie Sun. Before he left, Yuan Xian added in a stern voice, "My lord, I am loyal to you. Why would I hurt you?" Nie Qingyun is indeed suspicious. Yuan Xian was rarely so attentive. He pulled out Feng Ju. Mr. Feng and Feng Ju are biological brothers. The two of them know how to avoid each other and only see each other twice in the past few days. If Nie Qingyun really didn't have any tricks up his sleeves, why didn't he avoid Meng Heng? He even called him Big Brother when the couple whispered at night. At that moment, Huang Song really believed Yuan Xian, but his rationality made him choose to trust Nie Sun. Chapter 1058. Compared to Huang Song's melancholy, Jiang Pingji's emotions were calm. It seemed that nothing could attract her attention. As they marched north along the Song River, they learned about the situation in various parts of Zhangzhou. Meng Heng and Meng Hun were both from Zhangzhou. Although the former was a Zongzi with no real power, and the latter was a former lieutenant who had defected from Zhangzhou for 8 years, the two of them knew more about Zhangzhou than others. Meng Hun told him what he knew and Meng Heng added a few more sentences. When it came to war, not only did one have to understand the enemy's terrain and strategic deployment, but they also had to understand their combat strength and troop configurations. Jiang Pingji did not expect them to know much, but it was better than nothing. She took it as a way to kill time along the way. Meng Heng and Jiang Pingji were very serious. They could not withstand Jiang Pingji changing the topic too easily, and as they spoke they went off topic. I suddenly remembered that Jingtu stayed in Zhangzhou for a while. Jiang Pingji asked, "Do the nobles in Zhangzhou really like fighting beasts for fun?" Fu Wang tried his best to be a wolf, but his luck was too low, so he was captured by others to be a beast for others to amuse themselves with. It was not a secret and Fu Wang was not ashamed of his past. Instead, he often used it as an excuse to brag about it. That was why Jiang Pingji mentioned it without holding back. She was curious. Didn't they say that the aristocrats of Dongqing were all effeminate? Would a bunch of mothers like such a bloody activity? Just to watch lives fight for survival in the Colosseum? Meng Heng could not react for a moment, but Meng Hun was calm. After all, he had been with the Lord for 7 or 8 years and was used to it. Rumor has it that the ancestor of the Meng family, Duke Meng, had the ability to tame beasts. When Xia Taizu went on an expedition to conquer the world, he offered up 10 armies of beasts that made people tremble in fear. Like Qiyu, he can control iron-eating beasts, and his battle prowess is extraordinary. If it weren't for Meng Hun really wanted to call the ancestor's name directly. Why would he use honorifics? Meng Jing was good at fighting and could be considered a scholarly general who was good at both literature and martial arts. He also knew how to tame beasts, which sounded very impressive. Because of Meng Jing's influence, Sangzhou had always had the custom of raising fierce beasts. However, the ferocious beasts were prone to injuring people, so they died down after a long time. Only high officials and nobles had the qualifications to keep them. Ferocious beasts were not raised for the sake of making them act cute. The rich and powerful were bored, so they came up with a game of beast fighting, completely disregarding human life. Fu Wang was one of the victims. He was neither the first nor the last. Controlling an Iron Eater? It sounds majestic, what a pity. His ancestor, Meng Jing, was known as the White Dragon among men, but his descendant, Meng Zhan, was such an idiot. The future of the Mengs would fall on Meng Heng, the son who had been expelled by Meng Zhan. Jiang Pingji sighed with emotion, but the audience burst into laughter. Riding an Iron Eater? Awe-inspiring? How adorable. Huahua loves Pighead. Host, do you know who the Iron Eater is? Sang Ke, I guess the streamer doesn't know? To tell the truth, when I was young, I read about Qiyu riding an iron-eating beast to fight against the Yellow Emperor. At that time, I thought that the iron-eating beast was some kind of terrifying beast. One day, she followed her parents to the Moon-Sun delivery room at the panda base. Yiduanbo, I can't imagine a person sitting on the back of a panda and cooperating with them in battle. Jileo Yi Mei, I suddenly thought of something. In the streamer's world, pandas are wild, right? Hunting is not illegal. Why don't we raise a panda someday? Watching the streamer play with a cat from a close distance, I guess I can't quit this streaming room for the rest of my life. Huoyan Ji Yuan, the panda is a bear, but I want to play with it too. Jealousy is driving me crazy. Jiang Pingji was surprised. She knew there were iron-eating beasts in this world, but she had never seen one. According to the audience, the appearance of the iron-eating beast was different from the general description. Shurjiu, have you seen an iron-eating beast? Shurjiu was Meng Heng's courtesy name. Zhouyun Hengjiu. The courtesy name was not good, but it was not bad either. Meng Heng said, I have seen one. How does it look? Meng Heng said, according to the Book of Supernatural Beings, it is sold in the south. It is called nibbling iron. In area, it is also said that it looks like a bear, has a small head and legs, and is mottled in black and white. It can lick copper, iron, and bamboo bones. It looks gentle and harmless, but in fact, it is fierce and aggressive. It can smash a person's head with one palm. Jiang Pingji used her limited imagination to think about it. The image of a black and white brown bear appeared in her mind. It was quite fierce. Maybe it's because we have different tastes. She never thought she would have the opportunity to witness the cruelty of the iron-eating beast army so soon. The ancestors of the Mengs had the skill of taming beasts, but they learned it from a beast-taming tribe in the north of Tsang Prefecture. To return the favor, the ancestors of the Mengs sheltered the tribe and even encouraged them to marry the people of Tsang Prefecture. Because of the friendship between the ancestors, the tribe and the Mengs of Tsang Prefecture had established a strong relationship. The Mengs sheltered them and provided them with a place to live. In return, they helped the Mengs to guard the northern border. The farming tribes of the Central Plains had developed their farming skills, and the tribes had their own skills. Jiang Pingji led the army north along the Song River. There was no dam on the Song River, so the river was very wide and the current was much faster. Half a month later, Jiang Pingji arrived at her destination. The army crossed the river without any accidents. It was unbelievably smooth. Could it be a trap? Afraid of being ambushed, the army crossed the river with trepidation. They were ready to retreat and support at any time. By the time they all crossed the river and rested for 4 hours, nothing unexpected had happened. It's hard to say. We'll deal with it as it comes. Jiang Pingji frowned. According to the scouts, there was no ambush around. If there was, crossing the Song River was the best chance for the army to do it. What they didn't know was that it was not that Meng Zhan didn't want to, it was that he didn't get the information. The credit had to go to the general who had rushed thousands of miles to help the Hanchang Pass. Meng Zhan knew how many opportunities he had missed. He was so angry that he almost had a heart attack. He ordered his men back 10 times in a row. He couldn't even draw his sword and kill him. Huang Song and Lu Shi's army parted ways at the Song River and split up to attack Tsang Prefecture. Such an important news was hidden by the cowardly idiot. If the news was more timely, he might have been able to send troops to ambush them. But now it was too late. Meng Zhan was indeed an old ginger. He was more experienced than the new ginger. After venting his anger by killing people, he calmed down quickly. There weren't many strategic crossings along the Song River in Sangzhou. Huang Song and Lu Shi, the two kids, were probably planning to attack from both sides. Following this train of thought, Meng Jian quickly circled a few points, drafted a document, and sent out the order as fast as he could. Even if he couldn't resist the fierce attack, he couldn't let the two kids have it easy. Meng Jian's eyes flashed with madness. He seemed to have thought of something. He sat back on the mat and picked up the brush to grind the ink. Quickly, send these 2 letters to the general guarding Zhanjiang Pass and Yumen Pass. There were 3 natural barriers in Song Prefecture: Hanqiang Pass, Zhanjiang Pass, and Yumen Pass. Hanqiang Pass was a natural barrier to defend against the forces in Dongqing. Zhanjiang Pass and Yumen Pass were different. Chapter 1059. Meng Jian was astute, but he couldn't handle a useless teammate dragging him down. He wasted the best opportunity. By the time the urgent letters arrived, it was already too late. Huang Song and Jiang Pingji's army had already entered Sangzhou. Huang Song's side was fine. His mission was to restrain Sangzhou's army. He didn't fight with all his might, so the pressure on the south side of Sangzhou was less. In comparison, the pressure on the north side of Sangzhou was much greater. Jiang Pingji led her army and marched straight in. When Meng Jian's secret letter arrived, her army had already broken through the defense line at the border of Sangzhou. She tore an opening in a tough manner. Faced with the sudden attack, Sangzhou was caught off guard. Before they realized what was happening, the owner of the territory changed hands. The situation didn't improve until Meng Jian's secret letter arrived. Meng Jian knew clearly that Jiang Pingji had broken through Hanqiang Pass in such a short time. If she wanted to win, she had to come up with something special. He wrote a letter, along with his patriarch's keepsake, and prepared to ask the Gaoyue clan to take action. The Gaoyue clan was a beast-tamer tribe that Meng Jian's ancestors had a good relationship with. Almost all of them could ride ferocious beasts. Because of the friendship between their ancestors, the Mengs had taken care of the Gaoyue clan for generations. The Gaoyue clan had received countless benefits from the Mengs. Meng Jian asked them to send troops to stop Jiang Pingji's army, so they had no reason to refuse. However, the Gaoyue clan had been raised too well by the Mengs. They had a huge appetite and were insatiable. They could agree to Meng Jian's request, but when it came to military expenses, they asked for 1,000,000 strings of coins and 10,000 cows and sheep. Meng Jian sneered and agreed. At first, the Gaoyue clan and the Mengs had a simple friendship. The Mengs only needed to prepare a place for them to live. As time went by, more and more forces coveted Sangzhou. After all, Sangzhou was rich in war horses. Who wouldn't want them? If the Mengs wanted to protect Sangzhou, they had to have a trump card. The Gaoyue clan was the best choice. Since then, the Gaoyue clan had become leeches attached to the Mengs. The Mengs couldn't do anything to them. Now they wanted to play the same trick again. Sure, but we can't give them what they want right now. We can only give them 100,000 strings of coins and 1,000 cows and sheep as a deposit. When Lu Bugger retreats with his troops, we'll fill the remaining gap in one go. Meng Jian didn't show his anger or happiness on his face. It was as if Lu Bugger's conditions were nothing. In fact, Meng Jian only intended to give a down payment to trick the Gaoyu clan into working for him. As for the rest, that would depend on whether the Gaoyu tribe was still alive to take it or not. The patriarch of the Gaoyue race did not suspect anything. Seeing that there was a 10% deposit, he felt relieved. TSK, the Meng family's son, is getting stingier and stingier. Every year he sends us off with 100,000 strings of coins. Is he sending us off as beggars? The Haiyue patriarch smiled smugly. After he returned to his clan's land, he whispered to his confidant, "Now that we're in trouble, we still have to obediently hand over a large sum of money to avert the disaster. What were you doing earlier?" If Meng Jian wasn't so stingy, he wouldn't have to pay for it. Since he had been paid, he had to eliminate disasters for others. The Gaoyu clan took Meng Jian's military deposit and sent 5,000 strong men and beasts to the front line. Although the Gaoyu clan only sent 5,000 strong men, they could easily kill 20 to 30,000 enemies in a war. The Gaoyu clan lived a closed life. They knew Jiang Pingji's name, but they didn't think much of her. She's just a woman. Meng Jian can't even win against a woman. What a coward. If we capture Lu Shi alive, we'll have to talk to Meng Jian. We can't just give him 150,000 strings of coins every year. We have to give him 500,000 strings of coins. Although the Gaoyu clan was rich, no one would complain about having too little money. The Mengs used to treat them well. They gave them 300,000 strings of coins and 200,000 strings of coins every year. Ever since the stingy Meng Jian became the head of the family, the amount of money he gave them decreased year by year. Sangzhou's waterways were well developed. Merchants traveling from south to north would stop there. The business was developing well. The Mengs occupied Sangzhou and earned a lot of money. 500,000 strings of coins every year wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Now that someone was knocking on their door, they only thought of the Gaoyu clan? Hehe. If the Mengs didn't take the opportunity to extort money from them, they wouldn't know who their ancestors relied on. Jiang Pingji had no idea about it. The scouts she sent out had yet to send back any news. My lord, Luofeng Dock is just past this pass. Jiang Pingji glanced at the livestream's perspective and roughly scanned the layout of Luofeng Dock. Luofeng Dock? What's so special about this place? Meng Han explained, Luofeng Dock is located in Chenyan County, north of Zhangzhou. Luofeng Dock is densely forested and has low mountains and gentle slopes. Wild beasts often appear there. Most importantly, most of the people in Chenyan County are related to the Gaoyu clan. Luofeng Dock is their territory. If they wanted to attack Tsang Prefecture and Meng County, they couldn't avoid Chenyan County or the Gaoyu clan. Jiang Pingji said nonchalantly, so what if it's their territory? If they know what's good for them, surrender. If they don't, then fight. Meng Han choked. Fighting at the slightest disagreement was indeed the Lord's style. Meng Han couldn't persuade her, but Wei Ci couldn't just sit back and watch. He said, the army led by my lord is a benevolent and righteous army. Naturally, we have to be polite before resorting to force. If the Gaoyu clan is willing to forsake darkness and seek light, that would be the best. If they aren't willing, it won't be too late to send troops then. If word got out that he had beaten someone up the moment he arrived, it would not be good for his reputation. Jiang Pingji curled her lips. She was here to ambush Tsang Prefecture, but she had to greet them before fighting. As expected, she still couldn't understand the art of war in ancient times. As they spoke, the sound of hooves could be heard from afar. Our scouts brought back a burly man dressed in strange clothes. The temperature had warmed up slightly, but ordinary people were still wrapped up tightly. The burly man in front of them was different. He only wore an animal skin vest and a tiger skin floral skirt. His hair was tied up with a circle of brightly colored feathers, and his exposed skin was full of tattoos of ferocious beasts. His eyes were like an eagle's, his wide and long nose was slightly sunken, and his thick brown lips occupied half of his chin. His eyes swept around, then he cupped his fists and bowed. In a fierce voice he said, I'm the envoy of the Gaoyu clan. I'd like to see your lord. The burly man's elegant language wasn't very good. His accent wasn't correct and it was rather hard to pronounce. The envoy of the Gaoyu clan? Jiang Pingji raised her brows. Why are you here? After she finished speaking, she secretly glanced at Meng Han. Meng Han agreed to be polite before resorting to force. Did he already know that the army's whereabouts had been leaked? The burly man looked at Jiang Pingji with dissatisfaction. Is this how you treat your guests? The burly man said. You're receiving such treatment when you're on the orders of the clan leader. Chapter 1060. The strong man was representing the Gaoyue tribe. As the lord, Jiang Pingji should get off the horse herself. How could he sit on the horse and hide in the crowd? Was he afraid of death? Jiang Pingji could hear the unfriendliness in his words. She frowned impatiently. She didn't have the habit of not killing envoys in a war. She would kill whoever provoked her. Jiang Pingji went straight to the point. What message did the person behind you ask you to deliver? Just say it. I don't like guessing. The strong man's expression changed. He couldn't stand Jiang Pingji's neglect, but he didn't forget about business. My lord asked me to deliver a message. In order to stop you, the Mengs will pay 2 million strings of coins and 20,000 cows and sheep. However, we the Gaoyue tribe do not like disputes. If the Lu Prefecture magistrate can pay a higher price than the Meng family, then the Lu Prefecture magistrate will be able to come and go as he pleases in Thousand Rock County without expending a single soldier. The Gaoyue tribe will keep its word. The Mengs had only agreed to pay 1 million strings of coins and 10,000 cows and sheep. He doubled the amount. The viewers in the streaming room had been guessing his identity since he appeared. They were speechless after they heard the story. Jianshu Liangshui, the legendary Gaoyue tribe that can tame beasts? It felt like their attire was no different from the brothers of the African tribes. But what did he mean by that? The Gaoyue tribe took the Meng's payment and then sold them out? Tangerine jelly, what a cunning move. Dugufingya, awesome. I suddenly feel sorry for Meng Zhan. Does he know how loyal his dog is? Shanshan Shui, it's not bad if we can buy a victory with money, but the price is a bit high. People die in wars. If we can conquer Qinyan County with money, we can use it to pave the way. Of course, only a few people thought that way. Most viewers didn't like the Gaoyue tribe's double dealing. Even if they were mercenaries, they had integrity. What about the Gaoyue tribe? The strong man saw that Jiang Pingji didn't say anything, so he thought she was moved. He didn't expect Jiang Pingji to ride forward expressionlessly. White's beautiful face grew larger in front of him. 2 million strings of coins and 20,000 cows and sheep can make the Gaoyue tribe retreat and stay out of the conflict between me and the Mengs? Da Bai snorted in agreement and walked 2 steps around the brawny man, as if he was observing him. Jiang Pingji was so close to the strong man, and everyone's hearts were in their throats. The burly man said, "Exactly." Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and sneered. "I heard that the Gaoyue tribe is good at taming beasts. Have you heard of this saying?" The man's attention was attracted by Jiang Pingji and he did not pay attention to White. "What is it?" At this time, Da Bai had already circled behind him, found a good angle, selected a good target, and raised his hooves high into the air. A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. The brawny man didn't even have time to scream before Da Bai's 2 front hooves stomped on his body a few times. Da Bai's steps were very graceful, but his footsteps were extremely painful. Although it was not a heavy horse like the heavy cavalry, its weight and the scales on its body were quite impressive. With every step, everyone could hear the sound of bones being crushed. Soon, the muscular emissary's lower body was covered in blood, and he stopped breathing in the blink of an eye. "Drag it away and burn it." This person smeared some unknown powder on his body, which triggered White's ferocious nature. "Sigh, it's a pity that he died." Wei Si and the others were speechless. Who would believe such a lame reason? White's ferocious nature. "Ah, it's fine if my lord is unwilling, but why did you let White trample him to death?" Their lord had killed someone. What else could they do? At most, they would teach her a lesson after the incident and help her destroy the evidence. Anyway, they were in the wilderness. They could just refuse to admit that the Gaoyue tribe had sent an emissary. As for how the emissary died, they wouldn't know even if they asked. "I'm just angry that the Gaoyue tribe treats me like a fool, but they don't know that they're the biggest fool," Jiang Pingji said calmly. "They wanted to trick me into handing over 2 million strings of silver and 20,000 cows and sheep. They wanted to extort a sum of money and then break the contract. Even if they didn't break the contract, they would only give up Qinyan County. They didn't guarantee that they wouldn't take the opportunity to cut off our supply after we passed Qinyan County. We're deep in the hinterland of Tsang Prefecture, and our supply line has been cut off. Aren't we going to die? How dare they use such a dishonorable method in front of me? Who gave them the courage to show off in front of me?" Although the people of ancient times valued credibility, credibility depended on who they were dealing with. The Gaoyue people obviously wanted to cheat Jiang Pingji out of her money and lower her guard. Then they would beat her up. How greedy! How dare they show off such petty tricks in front of her? When Jiang Pingji was still a genetic warrior, she often received missions as a spy. She had seen all kinds of tricks, not to mention this kind of child's play. She frowned and said, "Remember to dispose of the corpses. We don't want to have a bad reputation." This incident was just an interlude. The army passed through the border and entered the territory of Luofeng Dock. After choosing their base, the army set up camp. On the other side, the Gaoyue tribe didn't see the emissary return. They deeply suspected that something had happened to their emissary. After waiting for a few days, they couldn't sit still anymore because Meng Zhan was urging them. Their plan to extort money from Jiang Pingji had to be put on hold. This is strange. Why haven't I seen any scouts from the Gaoyue tribe? Could it be that they really want to give up Qinyan County? According to the scouts, the Gaoyue tribe was stationed at Luofeng Dock, but they didn't see any traces of enemy scouts along the way. It didn't make sense. The Gaoyue tribe is good at taming beasts. They have secret techniques for taming beasts. This isn't just a rumor. Meng Hun looked up at the sky. There was a cry from high above. It sounded like an eagle flying in the sky. "Don't you think there have been more birds around the camp in the past 2 days? Feng Zhen suddenly understood. "Could it be?" Meng Hun nodded. "These birds are the scouts of the Gaoyue tribe. They are their eyes and ears." As he spoke, Wei Si came in from outside the tent with a pale face. Jiang Pingji was thinking about something when she heard the commotion. She raised her head and glanced at him. A fierce look flashed across her calm eyes. "Zixia, what happened to your hand?" Wei Si didn't expect to be discovered so quickly. He smiled bitterly and rolled up his sleeve, revealing his hand wrapped in white cloth. "I was accidentally bitten by a black snake." Fortunately it wasn't poisonous. Bitten by a snake? The ancient era wasn't the world that the audience came from. Snakes, insects, rats and ants were very common. When the army was stationed in the wild, accidents often happened when soldiers were bitten by poisonous snakes or ferocious beasts. When Wei Xiai said this, Feng Jin, who was beside him, said, "Zixiao was bitten too?" Feng Jin said, "Over the past 2 days I've often received news that soldiers have been bitten by snakes and insects. There are already 100 wounded soldiers in the casualty camp. Most of them were non-poisonous snakes, but there were a few poisonous snakes that were deadly. Not only that, but the scouts who went out also said that they had encountered many snakes and insects recently." Everyone's hearts tightened. Meng Hun and Meng Heng immediately thought of the Gaoyue tribe. They came from the Meng family of Zhangzhou, so they knew very well that the Gaoyue tribe's ability to tame beasts was much more advanced than what was recorded in the books. The Gaoyue tribe did this? Snakes and insects were not rare in the military camp, so no one suspected it at first. However, it was Wei Xiai who was bitten this time. If it wasn't a non-poisonous black snake that bit him, but a poisonous snake like the bamboo snake, Jiang Pingji's expression turned serious. Beast? Gaoyue tribe. Chapter 1061. My lord, the Gaoyue clan is treacherous. You must be extra careful. Meng Heng frowned, his face full of worry. As a Zongzi of the Mengs, even if he wasn't favored, he had more rights than the average clan member. He knew more about the mysterious Gaoyue clan than anyone else. The Gaoyue clan was greedy and ambitious by nature. They relied on the ability of their familiars and often condoned their beasts to retaliate against their enemies. They could defend themselves against human schemes, but who would defend themselves against animals and insects? The number of poisonous snakes in the camp increased, and eagles circled in the sky. This was a sign that the Gaoyue clan was about to make a move. Jiang Pingji looked at Wei Xiai, or more accurately his hand. Fortunately, it was a non-poisonous snake. If it was a poisonous snake, he would have died with the medical technology of this era. Even if he was saved, he would most likely suffer irreversible neurological damage. The Gaoyue clan is treacherous? What gives them the confidence to do so? Jiang Pingji's tone was cold and her eyes were calm, but they could hear the contempt and disdain in her voice. If the Gaoyue clan only fears their ability to control beasts, then there's nothing to be afraid of. Meng Heng and the others didn't show it on their faces, but they were curious. Their lord meant what she said. Did she really have a way to deal with the Gaoyue clan? Even Feng Zhen and the others, who were unparalleled in their schemes, found it difficult to deal with the Gaoyue clan's racial talent. Their schemes were all targeted at humans. They couldn't guard against the elusive and unpredictable beasts. Not to mention anything else, if the enemy sent out the 10,000 snake army, how would they fight this battle? Humans were born with a fear of snakes. It was fine if it was a non-poisonous snake, but if it was a poisonous snake, one bite would be fatal. My lord, do you have a way to deal with them? Meng Heng asked. Hearing this, Wei Xiai turned his gaze to Jiang Pingji. In her previous life, Huang Song was the one who dealt with the Gaoyue clan. He won, but it was a tragic victory. In her previous life, Huang Song and the Mengs feigned civility. He married Meng Zhan's mistress's daughter and took advantage of the marriage to gain power. Once he was strong enough, he devoured the disloyal Mengs. Fighting against the Meng family would inevitably lead to encountering the minions of the Meng family, the Gaoyue family. Huang Song had paid a heavy price for this. In order to win, Huang Song listened to the advice of his advisor, Yang Si, and made use of the wind that changed direction in winter to set fire to the entire Luofeng dock. He did not hear it wrongly. He burned down the entire Luofeng dock. The fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights. In order to prevent the High Moon clan from taking revenge, they stationed people in various places and killed any Haiyu clan that escaped. They secretly cleaned up the exiled remnant clan. Jiang Pingji smiled and refused to reveal the heavenly secret. Feng Zhen, who was at the side, said, "Wild beasts are afraid of fire. Why don't we attack with fire? Just like how humans feared wild beasts also feared things. If the Gaoyue race really dared to attack them with their beasts, they could use fire to teach them a lesson." Wei Xiai coldly stabbed Feng Zhen in the back. Recently, the direction of the wind has been a little uncertain. If we rashly use fire to attack, we don't know whether we will burn the enemy or burn ourselves. Feng Zhen thought about it. Wei Xiai was right. He could only silently suppress this idea. Jiang Pingji kept them in suspense. No one could dig out any useful information from her. They could only suppress their curiosity like a cat scratching its paw. Zixiao, stay behind. The meeting ended and Wei Xiai was called again. Feng Jin looked straight ahead and Feng Zhen patted his shoulder lightly. Only Meng Heng did not react. Wasn't it normal for the Lord to specially ask a certain official to stay behind for a chat? What was there to be surprised about? Wei Xi took a few steps forward and sat down a few steps away from her. Although it was not the first time he was called, Wei Xi was still not used to it. Does the wound on your hand still hurt? Once bitten, twice shy. This trauma would probably follow Wei Xi for a long time. Wei Xi shook his head. It hurt a little at first, but it was much better after applying medicine. The wound was just a little itchy. Does my lord really have a way to deal with the Haiyu race? Wei Xi thought about it and said, the Haiyu race can control beasts. My lord, you must not let your guard down. Not only can they control bears, tigers, wolves and leopards, but they can also order snakes, insects, rats and ants. If they let the snakes, insects, rats and ants carry the plague victims' belongings and contaminate the water in the barracks, I'm afraid we will be passive. We must not give the Haiyu race a chance to counterattack. Wei Xi was not a kind person. Or rather, none of the strategists who could leave their names in this era were kind-hearted. In his previous life, Yang Si could send the Haiyu race to hell with a huge fire. In this life, Wei Xi dared to do the same even more ruthlessly and neatly. Of course, Jiang Pingji's subordinates were all sinister and treacherous people. This was also a strange story. Other than Feng Jin, Meng Heng and Wei Xi, who could still maintain their noble and unsullied ways, the others had abandoned benevolence, righteousness and morality. Jiang Pingji listened carefully for a while and said in amusement, are the Haiyu race really that scary? Wei Xi nodded. The Haiyu race was indeed scary. According to what Wei Xi knew in his previous life, Huang Song had suffered a great loss at the hands of the Haiyu race. The source of the plague in the barracks was the Haiyu race. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and sneered. Wrong, they're not scary. Whether we can defeat the Haiyu race depends on Zixiao. On me? Wei Xi did not understand. Yes, on you, Jiang Pingji said. Can Zixiao help me find a flute? Find a flute? Wei Xi did not understand, but he had no reason not to agree to Jiang Pingji's request. He was good at music, so he would bring some musical instruments with him to kill time. Among them was a jade flute that he liked very much. I don't know that my lord is also good at music. Wei Xi really did not know that Jiang Pingji knew how to play the flute. In his previous life, Her Majesty had rarely touched a musical instrument. There are still many things that you don't know. Jiang Pingji tested the timbre. Looking at her jerky movements, it did not seem like she knew how to play the flute. While they were chatting and laughing, Jiang Pingji seemed to sense something. Her gaze fell on the curtain of the tent. As if to confirm her perception, anxious footsteps could be heard from outside the tent. The messenger panted and said, My lord, a large number of snakes suddenly appeared outside the tent. The messenger only said a few words, but the soldiers in the barracks were experiencing a crisis that overturned their outlook on life. The barracks were like an endless mountain range. Unknowingly, the patrolling soldiers noticed that there were more and more snakes. Just as one was killed, another one appeared out of nowhere. The colorful snakes flicked their tongues and opened their cold, gloomy eyes. There were many types of snakes. With just one glance, the densely packed group of snakes made the hairs on everyone's body stand on end: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple. Some of them were densely packed together and crawled toward the barracks. Some of them slithered up the prism and made terrifying hissing sounds. Apart from a few non-venomous snakes, most of them had triangular heads and poison glands bulging behind their eyes. Where did so many venomous snakes come from? Chapter 1062. It wasn't a group of snakes. The outskirts of the camp were surrounded by countless snakes. Snakes had slender bodies and could easily crawl into the camp through the gaps in the fence. At that moment, the quality of the soldiers was reflected. If it were an ordinary soldier, he would have wet his pants in fear and fainted on the ground. However, although the soldiers in Jiang Pingji's tent were flustered, most of them could restrain their instincts of fear. While enduring the goosebumps, they raised their torches and tried to deal with the snakes. Shrink the line of defense, pour oil on them and burn them. With a commander, they had a backbone. However, when faced with the relentless pressure of the snakes, the advantage of burning them was not great. Could it be that these snakes have become spirits? These snakes were not afraid of fire? Everyone was panicking. They didn't expect to die not on the battlefield but bitten by snakes. Feng Jin and the others heard the news and came out, each of them pale with fright. One snake was not scary, two snakes were not scary either, but was it not scary to see a densely packed group of snakes covering the entire field of vision? This is bad. Send someone to report to the Lord. If necessary, prepare to break out. Feng Jin and Feng Zhen were the first to recover from their fear and restrain their instinctive reactions. They didn't care about their own health first. Instead, they were worried about the safety of their lord, Jiang Pingji. The snakes seemed to be playing with them. Except for a few bites when they were burned, they chose to press forward at other times. It was as if they were enjoying the struggle and embarrassment of their prey before death. Many snakes even crawled up to the top of the tent, hanging one by one. It was extremely terrifying. Break out of what? Jiang Pingji's indifferent voice came from behind. She didn't seem to see the sea of snakes in front of her. Instead, she looked calmly at her strategist. She was cold. The audience couldn't take it anymore. They could accept Jiang Pingji killing a bloody path on the battlefield and watching her break out of the encirclement from the mountains of corpses and seas of blood, but they couldn't accept countless snakes appearing on the high-definition live stream. It wasn't just one or two, it could be hundreds of thousands or even millions of snakes. Tianyu Weilu, I can't take it anymore. The scene in the streaming room is making me feel very uncomfortable. Tong Tong Weiwei, I thought the streaming room was scary enough, but I didn't expect there to be such a powerful scene. Xuanxiang Taisho, it's the scary ancient times. I won't daydream about transmigrating anymore. I can't afford to play with my life. Shuizi Qingxi, I'm coming. Don't be afraid, my friend. Bullet screen protection technique. Greater summoning, socialist core values. The audience endured the disgust and fear, and the dense bullet screen covered the entire screen, barely alleviating the discomfort. Even so, many of the audience were still afraid. What was rare was that the audience members who managed to get a spot in the live broadcast room with great difficulty began to leave the live broadcast room one after another. It's not that they don't want to watch the live broadcast, it's clearly that the live broadcast is too scary, and if the terrors watch it, they will get sick. When Feng Jin and the rest saw Jiang Pingji, they felt much more at ease. Your Highness, please put your health first. I will arrange for a breakthrough. Jiang Pingji glanced at the snakes that had already entered the camp and said coldly, it's these beasts who should get lost. Jiang Pingji curled her lips. The Gaoyue clan is quite courageous to dare to show off in front of our ancestor. Feng Jin and the others were still confused. All of you step back. Let's see how your master is going to force back 1,000,000 snakes by herself. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but show off. Before Feng Jin and the others could react, she placed the jade flute on her lips. Everyone, when the first note was played, Feng Jin, Wei Ci, and Meng Heng, who are good at music, furrowed their brows. The sound of the flute was ear-piercing and sharp, rushing straight into the eardrums. It did not have the slightest timbre that a jade flute should have. Jiang Pingji acted as if she did not hear it. She stood rooted to the ground like a pine tree. Her long hair was as black as ink and her eyebrows were picturesque. When her eyes were slightly closed, her long and curled eyelashes were like thick little fans, fluttering. Her two wide sleeves slid down to her elbows, like clouds piling up, revealing two snow-white wrists. Jiang Pingji was still engrossed in it. If the sound was muted, she would really have the elegance of an immortal, but if it was not muted, the tune was not a tune and it was not a tune. It was like an ignorant child holding a flute and playing it randomly. Wei Ci and the others also thought that their lord was fooling around, but they quickly put this thought into the depths of their minds. All of you look quickly, snakes, snakes. Meng Hun was a boorish man and did not understand music, so he was the least affected. On one side there was a horrifying hissing sound, and on the other side the Lord's demonic sound filled the ears. Between the two, the Lord's flute sound was more pleasant to the ears. When Jiang Pingji played the first note, it was as if the pause button had been pressed on the group of snakes that had been wriggling forward. When the second note sounded, the orderly group of snakes began to panic. Their slender bodies twisted and wriggled uncontrollably. When the third note sounded, the soldiers nearby had an illusion for a moment. These snakes were afraid. They were indeed afraid. A tremor that came from their souls. Their bodies instinctively wanted to escape from the murderous calamity in the unseen world. In the eyes of the snakes, Jiang Pingji was no longer a blurry person. Instead, she was a huge king that controlled their life and death. If there was a strong person who was proficient in manipulating the mind, he would be able to see Jiang Pingji's spiritual domain, which was as vast as the sea, radiating arrogantly in all directions, enveloping everything it reached. It was a domineering declaration of sovereignty. This place belonged to the old lady. Whoever dared to come would be slaughtered. Jiang Pingji's physical strength was far from its peak. At most, it was the same as when she was 7 or 8 years old. However, her spiritual domain had already recovered to its peak. Even if she was suppressing two restless subsystems, she could still spare some energy to spread out her domain and erase the small brain regions of the snakes. She could really kill people invisibly. The so-called sound of the flute repelling the group of snakes was just a small trick of Jiang Pingji's to conceal her spiritual domain. After playing for a while, Jiang Pingji opened her eyes slightly. Wei Ci, who had been watching her, saw her dark eyes suddenly turn silvery white. However, the silver light only appeared for a moment before it disappeared. If he had not concentrated, he might have thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Jiang Pingji did not stop. Everyone in the military camp saw that the twisting and struggling snakes gradually stopped. They became loose and soft, motionless. Wei Ci did not know if it was an illusion. As the group of snakes twisted and turned, he seemed to hear a slight pop sound, which was very much like the sound of bones breaking. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense as far as the eye could see, the group of snakes did not move. After a long time, Jiang Pingji played the last sharp and ear-piercing sound of the flute. Finally, she was willing to put down the jade flute that had been wronged. The military camp was silent. Meng Hun used his weapon to poke the nearest snake. He found that the snakes were actually dead. Clean them up. It's disgusting to look at them. Jiang Pingji hung the flute on her waist coldly. She waved her wide sleeves and gracefully returned to the tent. Chapter 1063. This is simply a godly skill. Meng Hun poked at the corpses in disbelief. Every snake was limp. He sent a few brave soldiers to cut open the bodies of the snakes. They were shocked to find that the internal organs and bones of the snakes, which looked fine on the outside, had been violently crushed into pieces. Their brains had even turned into mush. Meng Hun felt that it was a pity when he cut open a few snakes in a row. I was hoping to stew a pot of snake soup to calm my nerves. He never expected the corpses of the snakes to turn into such a ghastly state. The poison glands behind their eyes had been crushed. The snake meat was inedible. He felt that it was a pity, but his eyes were filled with fanatical admiration for his lord. She had killed millions of snakes with her own strength. She had accomplished such a magnificent feat with ease. Meng Hun would be the first to refuse to accept that his lord was not a wise ruler. When the troops dealt with the corpses of the snakes, not only did they have to burn the corpses outside the camp, but they also had to deal with the corpses that had crawled into the camp. The weather was still cool, but it would warm up after a while. If they did not burn the corpses quickly and allowed them to rot and grow maggots, they did not know what kind of plague or illness they would bring to the troops. Because of Jiang Pingji's influence and regulations, the troops from top to bottom had reached a consensus. The dirty and rotten corpses carried the smell of plague and illness. If they were not dealt with properly, the illness would spread to the people. The group of snakes was too lethal. Even the Gaoyue people who controlled thousands of snakes did not dare to follow them. Therefore, when the snake riders of the Gaoyue people saw the fire rising in Jiang Pingji's camp from afar, they all smiled in relief. In the eyes of the snake riders, Jiang Pingji's choice of using fire to defend against the snakes was simply courting death. If the fire was too small, it would not be a deterrent to the snakes. If the fire was too big, it would endanger the snake riders. Most of the snakes were poisonous and their toxicity varied. Some of the poisons could take a person's life in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, while others would cause a person to die slowly in pain. It was almost an unsolvable situation. The snake riders were arrogant and confident. Only Wei Ci knew that they had the capital to do so. In his previous life, Huang Song had fought against the Gaoyue people. He had been surrounded by danger many times. The snakes had besieged him, causing him to suffer heavy losses. The snakes, insects, rats and ants had polluted the water source of the army, which made things worse. However, when the arrogant and confident Gaoyue people met Jiang Pingji, this was not kicking an iron plate but a titanium alloy plate. The soldiers outside the tent were busy dealing with the snake's corpse. The people inside the tent had different thoughts. They looked at Jiang Pingji with fresh eyes as if they were meeting her for the first time. Jiang Pingji didn't speak, and the crowd didn't know what to say, until a short, shrill sound from a flute broke the balance. Jiang Pingji glared daggers at Feng Zhen. The other party put down a bamboo flute in embarrassment. What are you doing? Music was supposed to be an intoxicating experience, but Feng Zhen's flute music was so awful that it rendered people speechless. Faced with the accusation, Feng Zhen said, "Just now, I saw that you used sound to control the beast. I really thought that the song you played was the key, so I gave it a try." Feng Zhen was not as accomplished as Wei Ci Feng Jin, and the others in terms of elegant instruments, but to him the flute was a piece of cake. When he heard Jiang Pingji kill the snakes with her flute, her posture of acting like the wind made his heart itch. He had a good memory. He had memorized Jiang Pingji's entire song. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Was her flute music that awful? Stop playing. The flute music is only an aid. There's more to it than meets the eye. Jiang Pingji mercilessly dispelled Feng Zhen's thoughts. If controlling animals only depended on a song, the Mengs would have found a way to dig out their secrets and kick them away. How could the Gaoyue people be so arrogant? Feng Zhen thought about it and felt that it made sense. He could only put down the bamboo flute helplessly. When did you learn such a divine technique, my lord? If I had leaked the news earlier, I wouldn't have been so scared that I broke out in a sweat and almost lost my composure. Although his mental fortitude was strong enough, he could only watch helplessly as tens of thousands of densely packed snakes swarmed toward him. Feng Zhen's legs almost gave way. If he had known that his lord had the ability to control beasts, Feng Zhen wouldn't have had to endure such psychological torture. Jiang Pingji revealed a cold expression that said, "I don't want to answer." It wasn't that she didn't want to answer, but she didn't know how to answer. Even if she was willing to explain, others wouldn't understand. Wei Xi said, "A while ago I heard my lord chatting." She said that she dreamt of the celestial mountains and seas. She heard the whispers of immortals as if she was receiving teachings. When she woke up, she didn't remember what happened. She only remembered the ethereal sounds. I thought that maybe my lord learned the art of controlling beasts at that time, and it happened to counter the Gaoyue people's conspiracy. It seems that our army's great victory was destined. In ancient times, people believed in the divine right of kings, and the people firmly believed in it. If Jiang Pingji wore the halo of destiny above her head, it would often produce unexpected results. Wei Xi lied through his teeth, and there was a hint of flattery in his words. Jiang Pingji was flattered. She looked at Wei Xi with a complicated gaze. This person didn't care about his reputation in order to help her cover up her lies. He was quite silly. Jiang Pingji said, "When I saw the snakes today, I suddenly had the urge to make them surrender and retreat. I accidentally used too much force, but I didn't leave any alive. I don't know where this ability came from. After Zixiao's reminder, it might be because of that dream." It wasn't a big deal, so Jiang Pingji changed the topic with a few words. Wei Xi and the others were easy to fool, but the audience in the streaming room weren't ignorant people from ancient times. Shenyuan Mingjing, "Streamer, how can you live with your conscience by fooling a group of loyal cuties like this?" Buhui Hui Shiji, "I'm begging for the ability to control beasts. I don't ask to be as handsome as you, I just want to learn the essence of learning." Miao Xiaoyao, I'm very curious, how did the streamer kill those snakes?" Jiang Pingji hadn't spoken in the streaming room for a long time, but it didn't mean that she didn't pay attention to the bullet screen. Streamer V, "They committed suicide by biting their tongues." Biting their tongues to commit suicide? The audience was almost in a mess. Who would believe such a perfunctory answer? Ishio Xiniangxiang, "Streamer, you're bullying us again because we don't study enough." No matter how the audience threatened and tempted her, Jiang Pingji remained unmoved. The corpses of the snakes burned fiercely. The Gaoyue people were worried and sent out scouts to investigate. The news they received made them tremble with fear. The enemy, who they thought had been swallowed alive by the snakes, was actually unharmed. How is this possible? The Gaoyue people were in a panic. The snake formation that had always been successful was no longer working. "Don't be afraid. If Lu Shi dares to challenge us tomorrow, we'll send out our army of beasts. Let's see if he can hide from us." The Gaoyue people could control hundreds of beasts. Their army of beasts had extraordinary combat power. If not, Meng Zhan wouldn't have tolerated them for so many years. It wasn't advisable to fight behind enemy lines for too long. There was still a way to deal with them by sending out the snakes. If they polluted the drinking water for the army camp, there would be no solution. The next day, Jiang Pingji sent someone to challenge them. Chapter 1064. Flags fluttered in the wind, bugles sounded, and the air was filled with the smell of burning. The audience held their breaths, anticipating the appearance of the Gaoyue tribe's army of beasts. After a while, dust rose from the horizon in the distance. The sound of running and the roars of beasts traveled into the audience's ears. Mo Lingyin, South China tiger. That's the South China tiger, right? Am I blind? Jiji Ruo Mo, damn, are we in an animal livestream room? The livestream room's camera faithfully recorded everything. Countless large beasts appeared, and the audience also saw a few large creatures following behind them. When they looked closely, they realized that they were elephants with long tusks. The elephants had canopies on their backs and there were people sitting inside. The Gaoyue tribe didn't ride horses. They rode on the beasts they tamed and they looked majestic. The beasts were arrogant. Even though they were far away, Jiang Pingji's war horses felt threatened. White was restless under her, and its hooves kept scraping the ground. After a while, it dug a small hole and snorted. It kept snorting, its black eyes flashing with fighting spirit. Meng Hun and the others were shocked when their war horses were startled. They hurriedly pulled on the reins to calm them down. War horses with good bloodlines had bad tempers, but those with poor qualities were more embarrassing. Faced with the beast army's imposing manner, many war horses showed signs of restlessness, weakness in their legs, fear and incontinence. Fortunately, the soldiers reacted quickly, and the army's formation didn't become a mess. As the two sides got closer, the audience could clearly see the Gaoyue tribe and their beast army. Almost all of them were large carnivorous beasts. Many of them were rare animals that had long gone extinct. Yanran, brothers, the Gao Meng in front of us, Suotun Liang Boan. Damn, I was scared to death. Look at what's that. Cat Demon Jun, damn. The battlefield was filled with dust. The true faces of the beasts were revealed one by one. The bullet screen in the livestream room was filled with exclamation marks. They were tired of seeing wolves, tigers, and leopards. A few elephants couldn't pique their interest. However, when thousands of black and white warriors came out from behind, their adrenaline shot up. Their beating hearts almost couldn't take the enthusiasm. Fatty. Although it was wearing a simple rattan armor to protect its vital parts, most of its fur was still exposed. How could the audience not recognize their national treasure? A small portion of the fatties carried Gaoyu clansmen clad in rattan armor on their backs, while the others obeyed their orders and formed a formation with the beast tamers. Black and white body color, round cheeks, big dark circles, a chubby body, and the iconic inwardly figure-8 catwalk. Who else could it be if it wasn't Fatty Da, who they had been thinking about day and night? The atmosphere on the battlefield was stagnant, and the live stream room was on fire. Dust like smoke. Come pinch me. I'm not dreaming, right? Ziyingxuan, they're all pandas, live pandas. There are at least 1,000 of them. The black and white panda looked charmingly naive, and the image of a panda hugging a bamboo and chewing on it immediately appeared in their minds. Mingyue Ryun, I'm so jealous of the streamer. I can't even afford the ticket to the panda zoo. When the panda core appeared, the passion of the audience was ignited instantly. The atmosphere in the live broadcast room was at its peak. Jiang Pingji did not understand. She frowned and looked at the black and white bear. Is that an iron eater? Jiang Pingji identified it for a while. The creatures whose eyes had been punched looked a little cute, but it shouldn't be enough to cause an uproar in the live stream room, right? Meng Heng said, exactly. They're very ferocious. Their claws are strong and they can bite holes in human bones. Shou Shi Gong, the people of the Gaoyue clan are too ferocious. The pandas are so cute, how can they be on the battlefield? How can they kill the enemy? How can they kill people with their cuteness? Don't they know how precious national treasures are? If one of them dies, how will the Gaoyue clan compensate them? The audience was filled with righteous indignation. The Chinese audience shouted, the pandas belong to us, while the foreign audience shouted, Fatty Da belongs to the whole world. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Damn it. Meng Hun and the others did not hit on the panda's cuteness. They all looked solemn. The ferocious beasts of the Gaoyue clan had a huge impact on the warhorses. If they attacked, the warhorses of the army would be useless. Not to mention charging and killing the enemy, it would be good enough if they did not panic. My lord, please send the archers out to face the enemy. Bows and arrows were the best against the ferocious beasts. They did not have copper skin and iron bones. If one arrow could not kill them, then another arrow would be fired. Jiang Pingji was about to agree when the live stream exploded. Luoyu treading on flowers, protecting Fatty Da is everyone's responsibility. Huya Hui, streamer, leave Fatty Da under the knife. To me, streamer, Fatty Da is so cute. Can you really bear to kill it? Fatty Da's fan club. Streamer, you have to know that Fatty Da is a living fossil that has been around for 8 million years. Killing one will put you in jail. Can you really bear to hurt such a cute creature? Look at their enchanting eyes. Can you really bear to touch your body? Beiteng Xianchao, streamer, if you hurt Fatty Da, I will hang myself on your bed with a noodle. The viewers on the red and blue bullet screen often criticized each other, but in order to protect the pandas, they were united against outsiders. They racked their brains to convince Jiang Pingji. As an all-star animal, Fatty Da's popularity was unimaginable. Jiang Pingji was expressionless. Her gaze fell on the black and white creatures wearing rattan armor. Very cute? The viewers saw their cuteness, but Jiang Pingji realized that most of the pandas were aggressive and wild. She shook her head secretly. She couldn't understand why the world in the streaming room would like such ferocious beasts. Jiang Pingji took out the jade flute from her waist. Wei Ci, who had been paying attention to her, subconsciously urged his horse to go around her. Feng Jin also noticed her actions. "My lord, what are you doing? Every man and horse under my command is a treasure. It would be a pity to lose them." Jiang Pingji pretended to place the jade flute by her mouth. "The Gaoyue clan has trained countless ferocious beasts. If they charge into our army, there will definitely be a lot of casualties. I can't bear to see that. Yesterday she fought against a group of snakes alone. Today she fought against the entire enemy army alone. She was so powerful." The Gaoyue clan didn't see Jiang Pingji's actions. Even if they did, they wouldn't care. The two armies faced each other without any unnecessary words. After setting up their battle formation, the Gaoyue clan asked the snake riders to use the snake formation as the vanguard to disrupt the formation of Jiang Pingji's main force. Once the formation was disrupted, the Gaoyue clan could command the ferocious beasts to attack. If she didn't do this, Jiang Pingji's archers wouldn't be just for show. Without torches, they wanted to see how the enemy would die. Most of the snakes that the Gaoyue clan had reared had been killed. The snakes that were sent out today were their last stock. Looking at the countless venomous snakes slithering over, Jiang Pingji played the jade flute without hesitation. The sound of the flute was sharp, ear-piercing, and demonic. Wei Ci and the others found it unpleasant, but the beasts on the Gaoyue clan's side didn't feel the same way. To deal with the group of snakes yesterday, Jiang Pingji used violent means to erase their brains. Facing the group of beasts today, her means were much gentler. What's wrong? The originally obedient group of beasts became restless. They moved restlessly and jumped, as if they wanted to overturn their masters on their backs. The Gaoyue clan members riding on the backs of the ferocious beasts were dumbfounded. Chapter 1065. What's going on? Hurry up and calm them down. The Gaoyue tribe had mastered powerful beast-taming techniques. The dire beasts were as obedient as kittens in front of them, and they rarely lost control. The beast masters obeyed their orders and tried to calm the agitated dire beasts down, but it was the opposite of what they wanted. Not only did it not work, but it also made the dire beasts even more agitated, and their eyes shone with a blood-red light. "Useless, all of you are useless." The Gaoyue tribe's leader, who was sitting on the elephant's back, grabbed the fence with both hands. His rough face was a little pale and he didn't look as proud as before. He even scolded, "Hurry up and control them." The dire beasts were so agitated that their usual commands didn't work anymore. The beast masters could only use whips to intimidate them. However, after a few whips, the dire beasts were completely enraged. A tiger with a green and white forehead roared and pounced on the beastmaster riding on the dire beast's back with its mouth wide open. The beastmaster didn't expect to be pounced on by a docile pet. Before he fell to the ground, he had a look of disbelief on his face. Before he could struggle, the big tiger with a pale forehead had already opened its mouth and bit down on his neck. Its heavy breathing hit his skin, and its sharp teeth sank into his fragile flesh. With just a little bit of force, the beastmaster heard the sound of his neck bones cracking before he lost consciousness. The smell of blood spread, completely triggering the dire beast's bloodthirst. As the beastmaster was bitten to death by the tiger, the other dire beasts pounced on the other beastmasters. The originally orderly army of beasts was now in chaos. Cries of pain came from the dire beasts' mouths. Before they could call for help, the usually docile dire beasts had already taken their lives. They bit, gnawed, or used their sharp claws to dismember the dire beasts' corpses. The viewers in the live stream watched with their mouths agape. The bullet comments on the screen didn't update for a long time. The silly and adorable giant pandas in their memories were now moving with strength that didn't match their clumsy bodies. The front paws that were usually used to hug bamboo had now become weapons for killing dire beasts. The seemingly gentle and harmless paws directly caved in the dire beast's head. The audience also knew that the giant panda's molars were very developed, and could even be considered the strongest among carnivores. However, their impression of how strong it was still stuck at the stage where it was gnawing on bamboo. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he could even chew a person's femur into pieces in 2 or 3 bites. On the battlefield, over 1,000 black and white balls surrounded the Gaoyu race army from all directions. Their originally adorable round faces were now filled with terrifying ferocity. The audience watched in silence, while the Gaoyu people, who were surrounded by the pandas and other ferocious beasts, were panicking. The great beasts were the trump card of the Haiyu race. Controlling the great beasts to kill their enemies was their specialty, but the Haiyu race themselves were not very powerful. They were too confident. They never thought that the beasts would break free from their control and help the enemy attack them. Don't come over. The ferocious beasts went berserk, and the Haiyu clan's beast familiars were scared out of their wits. The ferocious beasts that they had once completely tamed had now become the most terrifying black and white impermanence. Because of the intense fear, his eyes were wide open, and his eyes were filled with tears and blood vessels. The beast familiars tried to use whips, knives, spears, swords, and halberds to fend off the beast familiars, but it was to no avail. Even if they managed to repel 1 or 2, there would still be countless hungry ferocious beasts chasing after them, pouncing on them with their bloody mouths wide open. The seemingly adorable iron-eating beasts, the pandas, were demonstrating to the audience what it meant to never judge a bear by its appearance. They ran and chased after the beast familiars, the fat on their bodies rippling with cute curves as they moved. However, no one was able to appreciate this beauty at the moment. That was because once they were knocked down by a bear, their weight would be as heavy as Mount Tai, and the other black and white balls would follow up with another slash. Although the Haiyu race was an enemy, witnessing them being surrounded by the ferocious beasts and dying without a complete corpse left everyone feeling very conflicted. The ferocious beasts went berserk, and the canopy on the elephants' backs was flung off. The Haiyu race's leader and elders who were sitting in the canopy fell to the ground and were half dead. Before they could get up, the ferocious beasts who had lost control of their emotions pounced on them one after another, their sharp claws and teeth raining down on them. In just a few breaths, all that was left on the ground were the mangled corpses riddled with wounds. Their flesh was turned inside out and blood was gushing out. Before they died, their eyes were still wide open. As their breathing stopped, the strong desire to live in their eyes gradually extinguished. Only a horrifying fear remained on their faces. Jiang Pingji, who was the mastermind behind all this, was still playing the jade flute. She didn't know how to play the flute in the first place. Although her posture was pretty as if she was about to ascend to heaven, she was actually just playing the flute blindly. Feng Jin and the others didn't know the inside story and thought that she was really using the sound of the flute to control the ferocious beasts. In order not to disturb her, they tolerated the terrible sound of the flute. Wei Ci, who vaguely knew the inside story, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He saw through it but didn't say anything, continuing to pretend that nothing had happened. This battle. I'm afraid it's the easiest and most unforgettable battle I've ever fought in my life. Meng Hun muttered softly. Meng Hun murmured as he stared at the enemy without blinking, fearing that there would be an accident. Reality proved that his worries were unfounded. The ferocious beasts only cared about ravaging the Haiyu race, using brute force to grind them against the ground. Why would they have the time to care about them? Wouldn't it be wonderful if fighting battles were this easy in the future? Feng Jin sighed with emotion. Their tens of thousands of troops got into battle formation. Banners fluttered in the wind and drums beat. Everyone was in high spirits. They wanted nothing more than to skewer the Haiyu race like mutton. But what happened in the end? From the beginning of the battle to the end, they didn't even fire an arrow, let alone kill a single enemy. They watched as their lord played the flute, endured the piercing sound, and watched as the Haiyu race suffered the consequences of their actions. No one would believe it if they told others. If fighting battles were this easy, Feng Zhen would be willing to listen to this flute sound for the rest of his life. As soon as Feng Zhen finished speaking, the shrill and noisy flute sound stopped abruptly. As the sound of the flute disappeared, Jiang Pingji's brows furrowed. Her cheeks, which had been rosy before, instantly turned pale. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead. My lord, Wei Ci was the closest. He leaped forward on his horse and supported Jiang Pingji's slightly swaying body. Her right hand gripped the jade flute tightly, and the fingers of her left hand pressed against her sweaty forehead. A fierce murderous intent flashed across her pitch-black eyes. I'm fine. Jiang Pingji took a deep breath. Her tightly pursed lips curled into a faint smile. Her pale cheeks instantly became lively again. She said to Wei Ci, I had too much fun just now. I almost forgot my limits. Don't worry, I'm in good condition. I'll be fine after a short rest. A hint of understanding flashed across Wei Si's eyes. The Haiyu race had to expend a lot of energy to control hundreds of beasts to defend against the enemy. His lord had done it all at once. She must have been burdened. There is a limit to one's strength. My lord, please put your health first. If the lord takes care of everything, wouldn't it mean that we are incompetent? Feng Jin and the others had similar thoughts as Wei Si. Unbeknownst to them, Jiang Pingji had suddenly stopped not because she didn't have the strength to continue fighting, but because the subsystems had joined forces to attack and attempt to escape from the prison. Chapter 1066. Jiang Pingji's body was in trouble, so no one dared to let her continue taking risks. Anyway, the Gaoyue tribe and the beasts they tamed had killed each other. The Gaoyue tribe was almost completely wiped out, so there was nothing to fear. As for the latter, Meng Hun was about to order the army to be on guard against the beasts' counterattack, but Jiang Pingji dispelled his worries. If you don't harm them, they won't harm a single soldier of our army. Meng Hun's eyes flashed with joy. If that was the case, the last bit of worry he had was gone. Just as Jiang Pingji had said, the beasts that had been bloodthirsty not long ago were now well behaved. Some were lying on the ground, some were standing, some were yawning, and some were wagging their tails. They didn't seem threatening at all. Even so, the group didn't let down their guard, nor did they think that they were cute. After all, the remains of the Gaoyue tribe were still warm. With the Gaoyue tribe as an example, the group had a clearer understanding and fear of these ferocious beasts. What do you plan to do with them, my lord? Feng Zhen looked at the beasts, his eyes burning with passion. If they could use the Gaoyue tribe's army of beasts, it would be a great help. Jiang Pingji pondered for a moment and said plainly, separate them into different categories and release them. Release them? The answer was unexpected. Not only were Feng Zhen and the others surprised, but the livestream viewers were also stunned. Apart from the Gaoyue tribe, only Jiang Pingji could easily control the army of beasts. She didn't want to eat the fat meat that was already in her mouth, but she was going to throw it away? The army of beasts was not easy to deal with because they had met Jiang Pingji, their natural enemy. If it weren't for Jiang Pingji but someone else, the army of beasts would have long since beaten them up under the command of the Gaoyue tribe. My lord, isn't it a pity to do this? Meng Hun asked hesitantly. Releasing the beasts that the Gaoyue tribe had trained for many years into the forest was such a bold move. It was too wasteful. Having seen the fighting power of the beasts, Meng Hun was envious. Jiang Pingji lifted her eyelids in annoyance and asked a question that made people speechless. She asked, let's not talk about the elephants. Have you ever thought about how many chickens, ducks, fish, and geese the ordinary jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards eat every day? If you can afford it, you can keep them. The Gaoyue tribe could afford it because they lived in a fixed place for generations and raised a large number of domestic animals. If the budget was not enough, the Meng family would have to pay for the Gaoyue clan. Jiang Pingji fought in the war all year round and was never at home. The mobility of the army camp was too high. If he were to raise an army of beasts, the food that the beasts needed would definitely have to be transferred from elsewhere. Was that even possible? Jiang Pingji vigorously carried out the policy of farming, which solved the problem of food shortage during the war. Although there was an abundance of rations, it was only enough for tens of thousands of soldiers to eat their fill. Most of the time they were vegetarian, and they could only drink meat soup a few times every 10 days to half a month. Humans were already living such a hard life. How could they allocate chickens, ducks, fish, and geese to these wild beasts so that they could maintain their combat strength? It was a simple question, but it stumped everyone. Meng Hun pondered for a moment and knew that his idea wouldn't work. Race? They definitely couldn't afford it. Release him? Meng Hun felt his heart ache. It was better to keep all of them. Their fur could be used to make winter clothes. It was better than returning empty-handed. An intact beast's fur was also a very precious treasure. My lord, releasing the dragon into the sea and the tiger back into the mountains will definitely leave behind future troubles. It's hard to guarantee that no ordinary people will be hurt by them in the future. Jiang Pingji could tell what Meng Hun was thinking, but she didn't reprimand him. The people of ancient times didn't have the consciousness to protect animals. Because in the eyes of the people, wild beasts were enemies who competed with them for living space. Almost everywhere wild beasts had killed people. When ordinary people encountered ferocious beasts, they basically had no ability to resist. Releasing these wild beasts back into the mountains would indeed leave behind hidden dangers for the people. I'll give them an order to avoid strangers and go to the remote mountains and forests to live. Jiang Pingji understood, but she didn't want to do that. They belonged to the mountains and forests. If the Gaoyue people hadn't captured and imprisoned them, they would have been free. Most of the beasts were caught locally, but some were smuggled over from faraway places. Jiang Pingji made the decision to release most of them into the deep mountains and forests. She gave them an order, while the rest were left in the Gaoyue people's territory to raise and find a suitable environment for them to live in. The elites of the Gaoyue people were all annihilated. The defense of Luofeng Dock was useless. How could they resist Jiang Pingji's ferocious army? The army advanced triumphantly at the fastest speed. Using Luofeng Dock as a foothold, they outflanked the other two districts in Qinyan County. She was like a hot knife through butter. The Gaoyue people, whom Meng Zhan had high hopes for, couldn't stop her. As the front line lost again and again, urgent secret reports were sent to Meng County. The war was getting worse. Meng County was in a state of panic. Meng Zhan couldn't sleep for a few nights. Useless. Meng Zhan didn't expect the Gaoyue people to be so weak. They weren't fighting a war. They were sending their lives to the enemy. Although Meng Zhan was only using the Gaoyue people, he didn't expect them to lose so badly. The Mengs have raised them for almost 300 years, but in the end they're useless. Meng Zhan was so angry that the blue veins on his forehead were visible. He hit the table with his fist, which made a dull sound. After a while he took a deep breath to calm himself down. He asked, "Is there any news from Zhanjiang Gate and Yumen Gate?" The subordinate replied, "It hasn't arrived yet, but judging from the time, it should be coming soon." Hearing this, Meng Zhan's face turned a little better, but he couldn't stop cursing Lu Shi and Jiang Pingji in his heart. The former lived a leisurely life as a retired man. The latter went back to the two subsystems to settle the score. That day Jiang Pingji controlled the beasts of the Gaoyue people to kill each other. She didn't expect the two subsystems to take advantage of the situation. The mental brain was the strongest and weakest part of a human being. Jiang Pingji used her strong mental strength to imprison the two subsystems there for a few years. During that time the two subsystems behaved themselves. If it wasn't for the two light cocoons in her mental brain, she would have forgotten about their existence. To control the beasts of the Gaoyue people, Jiang Pingji diverted some of her mental strength. This created an illusion for the two subsystems that her mental strength was weak. It was a good opportunity for them to break out of the prison. The two subsystems planned to use all their strength to do something. As long as they broke out of the mental cage, Jiang Pingji's brain would be severely damaged. When that happened, not only would they be able to get away with it, but they could also find another host to infect. They could also help the main system to severely injure Jiang Pingji. Without special methods, the recovery of mental injuries would be extremely slow. As long as the main system's mental strength was higher than Jiang Pingji's, the scales of victory would be in their favor. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pingji was more cunning than they thought. Chapter 1067. Jiang Pingji didn't settle the score with the two subsystems immediately, but it didn't mean that she had forgotten about it. She only had time to manage the systems after she finished what she was doing and led the army to gain a foothold in Sangzhou. After all, they were friends who had been intimate with each other for several years. The two subsystems understood Jiang Pingji's temper too well. This woman's heart was even narrower than the tip of a needle. Whoever provoked her would suffer 800 lifetimes of bad luck. They waited and waited. The expected score didn't come. The subsystems then understood the suffering of the death row prisoners. When they heard Jiang Pingji's voice in their mental brain, they didn't feel nervous or afraid. Instead, they felt relieved as if they had been released from prison. At the same time, a thought popped up in their minds. It's finally here. Jiang Pingji closed the streaming room and instructed the servants not to disturb her. She had always been straightforward when talking to the subsystems. She was too lazy to beat around the bush. "You should know why I'm looking for you, right?" Jiang Pingji asked straightforwardly. "I haven't forgotten how you two took the opportunity to escape during the battle against the Gaoyue clan. If my mental brain wasn't strong enough to resist your schemes, what would have happened? This kind of mental attack from the inside out can cause serious damage to the mental brain, or even dementia or vegetative state." The two subsystems fell silent. To them, Jiang Pingji was the warden who imprisoned them, and they were prisoners under her custody. Was there anything wrong with prisoners escaping for freedom? If they successfully escaped, it was because they were capable. If they were caught by the warden, it was because the warden was capable. They could only blame themselves for not being as skilled as the others and being one step behind. After so much hard work, not only did they not obtain freedom, but they didn't even hurt Jiang Pingji. Instead, they lost their lives. The two subsystems were really unlucky to meet a host like Jiang Pingji. System number 1 had spent the most time with Jiang Pingji. It was also the most thick-skinned. It had the attitude of a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. The winner is king and the loser is the bandit. Our plan failed because we are not as good as you. We admit defeat. System number 1 said in a dry electronic voice, Jiang Pingji, you've locked us up for so many years. If you wanted to kill us, you would have done so long ago. You've kept us alive until now. You must be up to no good. But I have to warn you, if you don't kill him now, you might not have the chance in the future. Jiang Pingji was stunned. She smiled and said, why do you say so? Could it be that your main system has already discovered your situation and is planning to save you? If that's the case, I'm actually quite happy. The main body of the system is still hidden, which is a hidden danger to me. Hidden dangers were like ticking time bombs. Don't try to trick us. Even if we die, we won't say a word about the main body. System number 1 sneered and said, do you still remember the plane patrol merchant I mentioned to you when we attacked Fengyi County? He's here. Jiang Pingji's expression froze. Her eyes flickered as if she was trying to determine if system number 1 was telling the truth. He came. Jiang Pingji said, but I remember you said that it would take at least 10 years for him to arrive here? System number 1 said coldly, there are always surprises in everything. Plans can't keep up with changes. Logically speaking, it should take him another 10 years or so to find this plane. I don't know what went wrong, but the time of arrival has been brought forward. Jiang Pingji, you're dead meat. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids and did not say a word. System number 1 was still chattering away. If you hadn't acted smart and chosen to cooperate with me back then, it would have been a win-win situation for us. How could our relationship have become like this today? System number 1 seemed to have vented its anger and said to Jiang Pingji, you don't belong to this world. You're a spiritual body that has entered this world illegally. You're an anomaly. To put it bluntly, you're a pathogen that brings disaster. The plane patrol merchant will not let you off. Speaking of this, system number 1 was also sneaky. You're not afraid of being caught by the plane patrol merchant, but we don't want to be locked up. Naturally, we want to escape. If Jiang Pingji was not so stubborn and full of ideas, they could have cooperated to escape the pursuit of the plane patrol merchant. Now, it wanted to see how Jiang Pingji would die. I've told you before that the plane patrol merchant can't do anything to me. At most, they'll be locked up for a few years before being released. They don't deserve death. You're different. You're just a spiritual body. You're nothing more than an ant. System number 1 seemed to want to vent all the grievances it had suffered over the past few years. It kept saying, I know you think that my method of deceiving the host is despicable, but didn't you say it yourself? It's fine as long as you're happy while you're alive. Who cares if there's a flood behind you when you die? After you die, your soul is used as a reward for a second use. What's this? If you can exchange your soul for a lifetime of glory and splendor, how many people would be willing to trade with me? Don't think too highly of yourself and put gold on your face all the time. System number 1 rattled on. System number 2 did not say a word as it watched its companion attack Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji listened attentively for a long time before asking system number 1. If time could be reversed, Jiang Pingji let out a long sigh as if there was infinite regret in her chest. But she did not wait for system number 1 to be complacent. She suddenly changed the topic. I'll still lock you up. Working with a guy like you? You really think highly of yourself. System number 1 was exasperated. You're about to die, but you're still so stubborn. Jiang Pingji said, don't I still have you guys? Not only will the dimensional merchant capture me, but he'll also capture your real bodies. This business is not a loss. Before I die, I'll definitely drag you guys down with me. Without you guys stirring up trouble, the world will be much more peaceful. After some conversation, Jiang Pingji and the system parted on bad terms once again. Jiang Pingji looked at the moonlight outside the window, which was as clear as water. In a trance, she thought of a certain person who was like the bright moon in her arms. Since the dimensional merchant had come, wouldn't it be a pity that she had not cooked the frog? If she kept it and did not eat it, who knew which fairy would benefit from it? Thinking of this, Jiang Pingji grabbed a black cloak and hurriedly covered herself with it. She nimbly climbed out of the window. At this time, Wuxia had just finished washing up. With his damp black hair, he sat upright at the table and was carefully drawing something. Suddenly, he heard some movement outside the courtyard. Zixiao, Jiang Pingji leaned against the window and waved at him. Fortunately, Wei Xi was mentally strong, so he was not frightened by Jiang Pingji. He got up and walked to the window. He opened it for Jiang Pingji and let her climb in. Before closing the window, he carefully looked around. If someone saw his lord climbing through his window in the middle of the night, their relationship would not be clean even if they jumped into the Milky Way. My lord, if you have something to look for me, you can just send someone to summon me. Why did you come here alone? Wei Xi closed the window. As soon as he turned around, he was hugged by Jiang Pingji. She forcefully trapped him in front of the window. In the next second, he felt her warmth on his lips. What was going on? Wei Xi widened his eyes in shock. He resisted the physical reaction and raised his hand to push her away. My lord. Chapter 1068. Although their relationship had been tacitly acknowledged, they usually communicated with their eyes at most. Touching one's small hand was considered intimate, let alone kissing. Of course I'm happy, but, before Wei Xi could finish speaking, his lord leaned forward again. Wei Xi did not dare to struggle vigorously. The two of them fell to the ground from the window, which happened to be where the shadow was the heaviest. He could only see her silhouette with his eyes wide open, but he could not see her expression. He could only see the soft light reflected in her bright eyes. My lord? Wei Xi's breathing was slightly heavy. His hands were placed by his side. After a while, he put them on Jiang Pingji's waist. As he spoke, his lapel loosened, revealing a small part of his chest and delicate collarbone. Jiang Pingji nibbled twice and smacked her lips as if she was savoring the aftertaste. The taste is not bad. Why did I agree to the promise of waiting for 8 to 10 years? Jiang Pingji smiled delightedly. What Zixia always says makes sense. For the sake of having fun, one should do it in time. How can one wait? If there is fun, one should enjoy it. Why suffer? Wei Xi was stunned. He intuitively felt that Jiang Pingji's state was not right, but he did not know what was wrong. Zixiao, do you know that I probably don't have many days left to live? Jiang Pingji sighed. There was a smile in her words, so Wei Xi thought Jiang Pingji was joking. As soon as he heard the word, death, his expression suddenly darkened. My lord is blessed and blessed. You will be the ruler of the world in the future. How can you curse yourself like this? Jiang Pingji chuckled. She said, I love listening to Zixiao speak. Wei Xi's expression did not improve. Instead, he asked her, My lord, do you also think that I am just a vile person who flatters and fawns over you? Of course not. In that case, my lord should know that every word I say comes from the bottom of my heart. You should not simply listen to it as good words. Wei Xi was a very serious person. Jiang Pingji really could not dissuade him in this aspect. My lord will definitely live to a ripe old age. In the future you will have many children and grandchildren. Jiang Pingji blinked and said with a smile, In the future you will have many children and grandchildren. Wei Xi was stunned for a moment. After a while, he understood the ambiguity of her words. He was so angry that his face turned red. If his lord continued to be so perverted, how could he face the word F in the future? Everyone has their own ups and downs. If I tell you for sure that I won't be able to live to 100 years old and I'll die soon, Jiang Pingji said with a smile. Without waiting for her to finish, Wei Xi, who was trapped on the ground by her, suddenly moved. He turned around and pressed her under his body. The two of them were so close that their breaths were intertwined. Jiang Pingji did not have to look to know that Wei Xi was angry. It's impossible for you to suddenly die. Jiang Pingji responded with a smile and said perfunctorily, Yes, yes, yes. It's impossible for him to die suddenly. At most, he will die young. Wei Xi could not bear to listen to these words, especially when they were linked to Jiang Pingji, who would curse themselves for having a short lifespan all day long. If all the deities and Buddhas in the sky really heard it and shortened her lifespan, wouldn't Wei Xi go crazy? Zixiao, I don't want to either. Jiang Pingji sighed and raised her hand to caress his back. The two of them changed from lying on top to lying on their sides. They faced each other and said, I don't believe in fate, but sometimes I have no choice but to believe it. If not for the fact that I have no other choice, I don't want to abandon the foundation that I've just started, let go of my ambition and cruelly leave. A stolen life is really too short. Wei Xi's expression changed. He clenched his slender fingers into a fist, his nails digging into his flesh. You're a smart person. Most likely you've already guessed that I'm not Lu Shi, Jiang Pingji said. My surname is Jiang and my name is Pengji. I come from a very very distant world. I stole this part of Lu Shi's life. Although it's not what I want, I can't do anything if others want to take it back. Wei Zixiao, you said that I've coveted you for so many years and you're very clear about it. Why won't you allow me? Wei Ci listened to her in a daze as if he was listening to a heavenly book. His lips moved and he could not speak for a long time. A stolen life will definitely be taken back by the heavens? He came back to his senses. If that's the case, I may be able to accompany my lord for a while longer. Unfortunately, Wei Ci was also a thief. Jiang Pingji knew the deeper meaning of his words. She smiled and leaned closer to him, kissing him on the lips. As expected, Zixiao is still the most considerate. No matter how many years had passed, Wei Ci still could not adapt to Jiang Pingji's enthusiasm. He scrupulously abided by his identity and did not dare to overstep his boundaries and offend her in any situation. Even in such matters he let her lead. Although Jiang Pingji did not have much actual combat experience in the interstellar era, what could she not have? Her theoretical knowledge was very rich, and she was familiar with all kinds of difficult positions. Jiang Pingji saw that Wei Ci had tacitly agreed. Her right hand moved from his chest to his waist. After feeling around for a while, she started to untie the knot. His clothes were half undone. His eyes were drowsy, and the corners of his eyes seemed to be filled with moisture. While she was dawdling, Jiang Pingji's clothes loosened a little. Wei Ci could not suppress his emotions as he looked at her. Jiang Pingji was about to feel her hand down when the tip of her ear moved. There was a strange movement outside the door. She looked up abruptly, and coincidentally saw a tall black shadow flash past the door. Jiang Pingji's mind calmed down and she quickly got up. She straightened her clothes and opened the door. Wei Ci seemed to have been splashed with a basin of water. The misty look in his eyes faded, and it was replaced by rationality and seriousness. My lord. Wei Ci saw that Jiang Pingji maintained the posture of opening the door and did not move. He quickly took the lamp at the side to illuminate the room. He went forward to take a look. He saw a long black wooden box on the ground. The outside of the wooden box was carved with complicated auspicious clouds and dragon and phoenix patterns. In addition, there was a creature lying on top of the wooden box, moaning softly. Its soft and fat body was spread out like a meat patty. The creature seemed to have noticed them as well. It raised its head with difficulty, and its two black grape-like eyes stared straight at them. Jiang Pingji's face was a little gloomy. If the person had not deliberately made a sound, she would not have noticed that there was someone outside. Bring them in? Jiang Pingji said gloomily. Wei Ci could only squat down. He scooped up the black and white meat patty with one hand and picked up the black wooden box with the other. He thought that the wooden box was very light, but the actual weight was far beyond his imagination. He could not carry it with one hand. Jiang Pingji saw the situation and reached out to help. She weighed it. She did not know what was inside, but it was close to 100 kilograms. Wei Ci found that there was a letter under the black and white meat patty. Come in. Jiang Pingji's face was a little gloomy. No one would be in a good mood if their mood was interrupted by external objects. Wei Ci did not dare to directly pass the strange letter to Jiang Pingji. What if it was smeared with poison? Wei Ci was shocked when he opened it. The craftsmanship of this paper is really ingenious. It was as white as snow and as thin as silk. Even the best rice paper could not compare to 1/10,000th of it. Looking at the content, there were only 2 sentences. It was created by your father. I present it to you. Chapter 1069. This is emulation paper. Jiang Pingji glanced at him, and a hint of coldness flashed in her eyes, but she remained calm on the surface. What's emulation paper? Wei Ci held the piece of paper fondly. The texture of the paper made him sigh in his heart. Could such outstanding paper-making skills really be achieved by humans? It's just an ordinary piece of paper. Jiang Pingji looked down and sneered. The smile on her face was full of mockery. It's getting more and more interesting. Wei Ci did not understand what she meant. What did she mean by getting more and more interesting? Jiang Pingji had no intention of explaining. She placed the black wooden box on the table, her gaze solemn. Just as he was about to raise his hand to open it, Wei Ci hurriedly stopped him. You can't, my lord. We don't know the origin of this item. If there's any sinister poison in it. He held the moaning black and white meatball in his right hand and stopped Jiang Pingji from courting death with his left hand. Jiang Pingji said, Based on the skills of the person who came just now, if he really wanted to harm me, why would he need to play tricks inside? Lucy's current body was too weak. If it was in the past, she would have the confidence to settle the score with the person who came. Wei Xi could not dissuade Jiang Pingji, so he could only watch her anxiously. If there was an accident, he would pounce over. I can't open it. There's a problem with the box's lock. Jiang Pingji tried and found that there was a lock on the box. The design of the lock was very strange. She couldn't find the keyhole. This lock seems to be made with a special mechanism technique. My lord won't be able to open it like this. Wei Xi took a closer look and very quickly discovered the mechanism inside. He took the initiative to volunteer. My lord, why don't you let me try, maybe I can open it? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows slightly and took the initiative to make space for Wei Xi to open the lock. Wei Xi placed the black and white meatball on his lap. The little thing whimpered twice as if it was very unwilling. Jiang Pingji heard the noise and took a glance. She saw that the little guy was also looking at her. His sparkling eyes were like a pair of black grapes that were full of vigor. They were so clean that one's reflection could be seen in them. While Wei Xi was focused on unlocking the door, she secretly reached out and took the meatball. The fur on the little guy's body hadn't grown for long. It was soft to the touch like cotton. Jiang Pingji couldn't help but caress it from the back of its white neck to its black shoulder strap, then to its plump and fleshy buttocks. She squeezed it with her fingers. The black and white meatball realized that it was in a different place and was being teased. It struggled to turn its head and stared blankly at Jiang Pingji. Wei Xi's fingers were very nimble, and he exclaimed as he unlocked the lock. The person who created this lock must be an expert in the art of mechanisms. If one didn't have a strong understanding of mechanisms, this lock couldn't be opened at all. He really didn't know who made it. Wei Xi tossed and turned for the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Jiang Pingji's expression gradually became impatient. These emotions were not directed at Wei Xi. You have the heart to give me something, but you set up a trap to make things difficult for me. I really don't know if you have good intentions or bad intentions. Jiang Pingji's tone was very unpleasant. Her furrowed brows left a few wrinkles between her eyebrows. If Zixiao is in trouble, why don't you smash it open with a pendulum? That way you won't have to waste your energy. Is the Lord getting impatient? Wei Xi's laughter was mellow. If he couldn't open it, he would smash it open with an axe. Such violent actions had not changed at all. He said, the item in the box must be extraordinary to be able to use such an exquisite mechanism lock. My lord, please be patient. He raised his hand to wipe the thin layer of sweat on his forehead. After a long while he finally opened it. He pressed something with his finger. After a clear click, the lid of the wooden box automatically popped open, revealing its true appearance. This isn't... Wei Xi saw the item in the long wooden box clearly. He was so shocked that he almost bit his tongue. Jiang Pingji raised her head when she heard him. She placed the black and white meatball on her lap and reached out to take out the item that lay quietly in the wooden box. It was a knife. The blade was narrow and straight, shiny like snow. It was covered with faint natural cloud patterns, giving off a rich and sharp aura for no reason. The handle of the knife was very long. The two ends were wide and the middle was slightly narrow. Even if the user held the knife with both hands, it wouldn't feel cramped. The blade and the handle were 3 feet and 3 inches long. The length was slightly longer than an ordinary sword. Do you recognize this knife? Jiang Pingji was right about Wei Xi's surprise. He had definitely seen it before and was very familiar with it. Wei Xi calmed himself down and deliberated on how to speak. This knife used to be Her Majesty's knife. It accompanied her on her expeditions for more than 10 years. Countless people were killed by the knife. She even used it to kill many traitors and enemies. Ever since I followed Her Majesty, this knife has never left her side. Later, on Changxing's 18th birthday, Her Majesty gave this knife to Changxing as a token of the crown prince. This was the first time Wei Xi talked about Her Majesty so frankly, and it was in front of Jiang Pingji. Changxing? Sure enough, Jiang Pingji seemed to have figured something out. A faint smile appeared on her face. No wonder you like Feng Jin's child so much. If I'm not wrong, Fushou is also our future child. But this name has already been set. It can't be used anymore. Wei Xi blushed with embarrassment. That was not the main point. You said that this knife has appeared before? Jiang Pingji did not follow up with another attack. Instead, she changed the topic. This made Wei Xi heave a sigh of relief. If she continued to ask, Wei Xi felt that he would not be able to keep his mouth shut. Yes, but Her Majesty has never talked about its origin. Outsiders think that it was seized from the enemy, but I don't think so. He did not expect to have the opportunity to witness the answer to the unsolved mystery of his previous life. The knife that followed Her Majesty was not a spoil of war, nor was it a divine object from heaven. It was merely a gift from a mysterious person. Of course not. The material of this knife is not something that can be made with the current smelting technology, Jiang Pingji said calmly. Because Wei Xi and she had a common secret, she was not afraid that Wei Xi could not accept it. She was even less afraid that her words would scare him. Do you know? This knife was also extremely rare in my previous life. Only people above 1 trillion could have it. Wei Xi opened his eyes slightly in shock. In both his previous lives, this was the first time that he heard his lord take the initiative to talk about her past. My lord's previous life? It was a very beautiful but very cruel world. Wei Xi had personally experienced death and rebirth, so he was also very receptive to strange and dazzling things. Because he had already guessed it, he was not surprised that Jiang Pingji took the initiative to admit it. Instead, he was very curious about what kind of world could cultivate a person like Jiang Pingji. As someone who was born to stand at the peak and look down on the masses, any slight grievance was a humiliation to her. But that's all in the past. It's better not to mention it, Jiang Pingji said without hesitation. This piece of paper and this knife have a great background. A great background? Jiang Pingji said, the raw material of paper is plant fiber, but this is the most ancient paper-making technique. For example, the materials used in the current rice paper and bamboo paper are the most primitive. To produce a large amount of paper, a large number of plants must be cut down. Excessive cutting will damage the environment and worsen it. For example, dense forests will turn into wastelands. In my world, the law prohibits using plants to make paper because it is too polluting and the cost is too high. However, people will always use paper in their lives. This is something that cannot be replaced by external objects, so there is emulation paper. Chapter 1070. Wei Xi had a hard time listening, but he could understand a little. What about this sword? Jiang Pingji said, I've seen this sword a few times. It's the sword of a federal marshal. Marshal? Something like a commander-in-chief who controls military power? More than that, Jiang Pingji said. If I have to make an analogy, it's equivalent to the emperor, but its power is higher than the emperor's. There's only one federal marshal and there are 10 corps commanders under him. Each corps is divided into 10 military regions, and each military region has about 1 million troops. The federal marshal has the highest power to mobilize troops. How much power do you think the federal marshal has? Only the marshal deserves to have a sword made of this material. Wei Xi was more and more shocked as he listened. 1 million troops? That was the military power of a military region. If it was the federal marshal, wouldn't he control 100 million troops? How many people was 100 million? Didn't the population of the 5 countries add up to 50 million? Jiang Pingji said, this is the military power during peacetime. If there's a war, the army has to be expanded more than 10 times. Since Jiang Pingji was conscious, the Federation had been fighting everywhere. There was almost no time to rest. The human alliance loved peace, but they couldn't stand the troublesome neighbors and the war was endless. In the past, Jiang Pingji was also a big boss who controlled hundreds of millions of federal elites. In this life, she led a group of weak warriors to rob a small farm. She was too ashamed to face others. She also wanted to save face. Wei Xi couldn't imagine what kind of world his lord's previous life was like. What? Only the federal marshal has a sword made of this material? Is it similar to the emperor's token? Wei Xi didn't understand Jiang Pingji's world, but he could analyze a lot of content from her few words. She said it so calmly as if she was used to it. It could be seen that his lord's status in her previous life was also extraordinary. Even if she wasn't at the corps level, she was at least at the military region level. In this world, she was also a person with power that could overturn the world. This is considered a federal secret. If it was in the past, if I dared to reveal half a word, I would most likely be sent to the military court, then dismissed, and... Jiang Pingji made a gesture of cutting off a head, but she said, now. I've said it. This sword is already in front of me. What else can't I say? This saber is made of a special material, and only one can be forged in the entire world. It wasn't accurate to say that he had searched the entire world. To be more precise, he had searched the entire universe. Jiang Pingji was amused when she saw the confidential documents. The universe was vast and boundless, and intelligent creatures had only explored a small area. How could they dare to say that they had searched the entire universe? Who gave him face? Wasn't there a second blade in front of her now? So rare? What kind of substance is it that there's only a little of it in the world? Wuxia looked at the knife. Other than feeling that the knife was very sharp, he could not see anything special about it. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "It's rare not because of its material, but because it can kill a god." Slay god? Are there really gods in this world? Wuxia was even more shocked. There are no gods in this world. I'm just bluffing. Jiang Pingji's smile was somewhat evil. She said, "The god that I mentioned is, to put it bluntly, a virtual creature." It sounds a little abstract, but you can imagine a virtual creature as something condensed from people's beliefs. It doesn't have a physical body and exists in an illusory world. It's a little like a ghost. In my world, a virtual creature called Tianbao tried in vain to subvert the entire world. It was created by people and possessed great power, comparable to an omnipotent god. Wuxia listened carefully. Everything that Jiang Pingji said was no different from a fantasy story to him. It was strenuous to listen, but he wanted to further understand the person in front of him. In both his previous and current lives, there had never been a moment like now when he was so close to her. A god created by people? It has the ability to overturn rivers and seas and is omnipotent? Jiang Pingji sneered. Something like that. However, a god created by people, no matter how strong it is, has to listen to people, to the ants in its eyes. How can a god be willing to be controlled by ants? Tianbao made use of people's reliance on it to launch a sudden war and cause countless things. It also sold all kinds of secrets to the surrounding forces. In my world there were wars one after another. Wasn't it the aftermath of the turmoil of Tianbao? It wasn't until the day I died that the war came to an end. But I don't know when it will come again. Tianbao was very similar to the system. Both were top-notch virtual creatures. How could they be willing to be subordinate to others? When Jiang Pingji was possessed by the system and figured out the identity of the other party, she guarded against it. Wasn't it also the aftermath of the disaster of Tianbao? Such a high and mighty existence was like a powerful weapon that could go out of control at any time. Not only could it hurt the enemy, but it could also hurt itself. After the disaster of Tianbao subsided, people created another Tianbao. Because people can't live without Tianbao, there must be a substitute. The marshal's saber appeared at that time. Not only is it a symbol of status, but it is also the only saber in the world that can completely kill Tianbao. The two keep each other in check to prevent a second Tianbao disaster. Wuxia could not imagine why anyone would be unable to leave the heavenly brain, and would not be able to live without it? If that's the case, why would this saber? Wuxia didn't know how to ask. Fortunately, Jiang Pingji understood. It's not the same one. I've seen the saber in the marshal's hand. The style is different. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and put the long saber back into its scabbard. She could feel that in her brain the two subsystems were trembling. She smiled in satisfaction. Regardless of the intention of the person who gave me the saber, since he gave it to me, how can I refuse? Although there's no god in this world, the blade is extremely hard. It's also excellent for killing enemies. Every time I go to war, my weapon is always bent to the point that even my mother can't recognize it. With this saber, I don't need to change it anymore. Jiang Pingji sighed with emotion. She felt very sour. She used the precious yin and yang jade pendant to flirt with Zishao. She used the more powerful saber to chop people's heads. She had a huge fortune but couldn't spend it. Her life was as lonely as snow. Wuxia was also relieved. Although he heard Jiang Pingji explain the real use of the saber, Wuxia wasn't from that world. He didn't have a deep understanding of it. As long as it was a good saber, the Lord could kill to her heart's content. That was the most important thing. As for the person who gave the gift, Wuxia suddenly thought of something and asked. The person said that this saber was made by your father. Was this really made by the old man? Jiang Pingji said, do you think it's possible for my father to make this kind of saber? The biggest possibility should be my father from my previous life? Although I don't know who he is. When I was 3 years old, I was found in the ruins of a battlefield and brought back to an orphanage. Then I was adopted by a couple. The couple treated me fairly well, but because of some special reasons, they sent me to the military school for children in the war zone. There, I was treated as a genetic warrior similar to a man of sacrifice, and raised in secret. My childhood memories are too vague, but I'm sure that there aren't any memories of my birth parents. There were millions of orphans in the Federation. Jiang Pingji couldn't find out about her past. She seemed to have appeared out of thin air. She was very fickle by nature. If she couldn't find anything, then so be it. She wouldn't force it. Jiang Pingji held the saber in one hand and scooped up the black and white meatball with the other. It's late at night. Zixiao, are you going to bed? Wei Xi's expression changed slightly. He seemed to have remembered the unfinished business just now. I'm not going to do anything to you today. I'm just hugging you to sleep. Don't think too much. She had a hunch that she wouldn't die anytime soon. What the system said was all King flattery. My lord, what do you mean you can't do it? Does this sound like something a woman would say? Wait, was the lord also a woman in her previous life? Chapter 1071. Jiang Pingji immediately noticed Wei Xi's abnormality. She secretly looked at Wei Xi's side profile while stroking the black and white meatball's fur, wondering how long it could hold it in for. Facts had proven that Wei Xi was an enigma. Not only did he have a lot of thoughts, but he was also meticulous. If he was not exposed, he would be able to hold it in as if nothing had happened. Zixiao, sooner or later you will become a teenage mutant ninja turtle. Jiang Pingji could not help but use the words of the audience in the streaming room to tease him. Wei Xi could have secrets with anyone, but there was no need to hide them from her, especially when the secrets were related to her. Wei Xi was lying upright on the bed, his body covered with a blanket that had the fragrance of honey locust. The two of them were neither too close nor too far away. His arm could feel the heat emitted from her body. With such a stove lying beside him, stirring up his emotions, how could he sleep? Hearing Jiang Pingji's voice, he came back to his senses immediately. He looked a little confused. Although he didn't know what the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were, he had a feeling that it wasn't anything good. You have any questions, just ask. You already know my biggest secret, so do you think I'll be stingy with my other small secrets? Jiang Pingji smiled and pried his words out. Wei Xi held it in for a while and asked her in a low voice. What does my lord think about Long Yang? The topic had changed too much. Even Jiang Pingji could not guess what Wei Xi was worried about. Long Yang? Are you talking about the love between men? Jiang Pingji scooped up the black and white meat from her stomach to prevent it from suffocating under the blanket. The meatball whimpered softly, lazily lying between the two of them. Its little head turned left and right, as if it was observing them in the dark. Exactly, Wei Xi said. Does my lord object to this? Jiang Pingji said, feelings have nothing to do with gender. I'm not an old-fashioned person. Wei Xi replied, oh. His expression became more and more strange. Jiang Pingji had an ominous premonition. Because it was Wei Xi, Jiang Pingji was unwilling to use other methods to beat around the bush, so she simply played a straight ball. She smiled and said, I'm using my status as the Lord to order you to say whatever you have to say. Don't hide anything. Wei Xi's lips moved and his eyes met hers. After a while he said hesitantly, my lord has the looks of a dragon and a phoenix, a rare talent in the world. Such a carefree and unrestrained temperament is extremely rare even among men, let alone women. In my lord's previous life. He could not continue. Jiang Pingji understood. You mean you suspect that I was a man in my previous life? That's why you asked me what I think about Long Yang? Wei Xi's expression darkened and he nodded. Zixiao, why are you so cute? Jiang Pingji walked past the black and white meatball and smiled as she pressed Wei Xi back onto the bed. Half of her body was pressed against his. If I were really a man, what would you do? Wei Xi said, if that's the case, I can understand why His Majesty in the previous life was so resistant to fertility. As a man he turned into a woman. Not only was he subservient, he also wanted to have children like a woman. Strangely, not only did Wei Xi not find it unacceptable, but he felt wronged for Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji laughed heartily, but she was afraid that her voice would be too loud and attract the night watchman, so she simply snuggled in Wei Xi's arms, her shoulders trembling. Your imagination is really more terrifying than a black hole. Is this also considered a type of coldness? Jiang Pingji stopped laughing and the corners of her eyes were filled with tears. She said, it's not because of this that I'm resistant to fertility. In my previous life, fertility was not a woman's business. Wei Xi opened his eyes wide in shock. Could it be that in the Lord's previous life, a man was pregnant for 10 months? He could not help but think of himself with a big belly. His expression was red and green. Of course, it's not a man's business. Jiang Pingji admired his expression and said after she was happy, the man contributes his essence and the woman provides the egg. The combination of the two is a fetus, which is placed on a special device. When the fetus is fully developed, the child is considered born. During the whole process, the woman does not have to provide a palace room and spends a few months to conceive the child. This practice is also against the law. Wei Xi was dumbfounded as he listened. What Jiang Pingji said was like a fantasy story to him. It was full of unknown charm. This sounds magical. However, nature has endowed women with the ability to conceive. Is this against the harmony of heaven? Wei Xi could not imagine that scene, not to mention that it was against the law for a woman to be pregnant. He did not dare to do that even in his daydreams. Jiang Pingji smiled and explained the reason to him. Wei Xi was fascinated by it. He tried to understand Jiang Pingji's world and passed from her few words. Only then did he understand why the emperor in his previous life and the lord in this life had strongly promoted women's camps. The more he understood, the heavier Wei Xi's heart was. He suddenly did not dare to think about it and he did not dare to delve into it. What kind of mood did the emperor in his previous life have when she gave birth to a long life? After all, to her, longevity was enough. The existence of a long life was really unnecessary. Sleep. If you don't sleep now, you won't be able to sleep when the sun rises. Jiang Pingji put her hand on his waist. The two of them faced each other on a pillow, like a pair of inseparable lovers. The black and white meatball was sandwiched in the middle. Seeing that the two of them did not speak, it softly whimpered twice and simply lay down to sleep. To outsiders, the scene was warm and peaceful. For the subsystem in the center of the whirlpool, it was really like a year. If Jiang Pingji did not get the knife, although she could still kill the subsystem, she would definitely hurt herself. In the future, when she faced the main body of the system, it would be hard to predict the outcome. This was also the reason why Jiang Pingji trapped the subsystem. First, it was to not alert the enemy, and second, it was also to be safe. Now that she had a treasure that could kill virtual creatures, she had no worries here. Naturally, the subsystem would be in danger. Jiang Pingji cherished the time alone with Wei Xi, so she did not find trouble with the subsystem immediately. The sky outside the window was just beginning to brighten. Jiang Pingji opened her eyes and quietly lifted the bedding. She left without alarming anyone. When she returned to her residence, the sun was almost up. Jiang Pingji pretended that nothing had happened. She washed up, brushed her teeth, changed her clothes, and went to the martial arts training field for a morning practice as usual. "My lord is here." Li Yun was bare-chested, revealing his strong and powerful muscles. His whole body was steaming with sweat. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, the little angel had also evolved into a mobile hormone. Jiang Pingji was streaming. Li Yun's appearance naturally did not escape the discerning eyes of the group of people who were crazy about appearances. The whole screen was full of comments like, "The little angel's muscles are so great," "The capital is majestic," "Stretch out your hand to touch and lick," and so on. They deeply suspected that if the streaming room introduced the virtual touch function, would Li Yun's integrity, muscles, and **** be preserved? Jiang Pingji sighed with emotion. The morals of the world were deteriorating day by day, and people's hearts were not what they used to be. I'll practice a bit to prevent my bones from rusting." Li Yun held a spear in one hand. With his sharp eyes, he saw the brand new blade in Jiang Pingji's hands. Just by looking at it, he felt the aura of the knife was threatening. It must be a good knife. Chapter 1072. Jiang Pingji glanced at the silver spear in Li Yun's hand. It was Li Yun's treasure. It would be difficult to compensate for it if it was broken. "I don't mind practicing, but I'm afraid your spear will break." Li Yun's expression was one of disapproval. The spear in his hand was made from extremely precious materials and the world's best smelting and forging techniques. It had accompanied Li Yun in battle for many years and was still brand new. Jiang Pingji saw that he didn't believe her, so she held the hilt of the sword with her right hand and easily pulled it out. This sword was not only longer than a normal sword, but it was also terrifyingly heavy. It was much heavier than Dian Yan's double axes. The snow-white blade drew a white light in the air, the sharp edge making people feel pressured. Li Yun practiced the long spear, but he also knew how to use a sword. To a general of this era, a weapon was like a luxury car to a modern man. In a way, it was a wife. When the blade was unsheathed, Li Yun's eyes lit up and he blurted out, "Good sword. Take a look." Jiang Pingji gestured for someone to bring a normal sword over. She held it and waved it. A white light flashed and a crisp cracking sound rang out. With a clang, the two halves of the sword fell to the ground, stirring up some dust. Li Yun was dumbfounded. This sword came at the right time. I can save some expenses in the future. It's not like I have to reforge my saber every time I fight a battle. To her, this divine weapon that could threaten the sky's brain could only be used to kill people and cut fruits, and also to make the system fearful. Other than that, did it have any other value? Nothing. Li Yun didn't use a sword, but it didn't stop him from admiring it like a beauty. Lord, does this sword have a name? What's the big deal about cutting a hair? The sword in his lord's hand could go head-to-head with other weapons and even cut the opponent in half like a fruit. It was definitely a divine weapon. Jiang Pingji was bad at naming. There was no doubt about that. Faced with Li Yun's tricky question, she thought about it and said, "It's called Deity Slayer." Simple and domineering, obvious at a glance. Li Yun sighed. Deity Slayer? A divine weapon deserves a good name. It wasn't that his lord didn't know how to name things, but why did she give Bai Bai such a bad name? Every time Li Yun called out to Bai Bai, he felt an inexplicable sense of shame. After practicing with her knife for a while, Jiang Pingji also helped the cooks in the camp chop a pile of firewood. She only stopped when she was slightly sweaty. The audience in the streaming room had long been paying attention to the knife in Jiang Pingji's hand. Such a saber was not something that could be made with the forging techniques of this era. Even in their era, according to a certain Tibetan army veteran, it seemed to be very difficult to achieve. No matter how the audience discussed, Jiang Pingji kept her guard up and refused to reveal anything. Finally, the audience concluded, "Unreal City, the streamer is a cheat. She used to be a human-shaped weapon, and now she has an artifact cheat. She's ready to go to heaven." Zhaoran. According to the recent trending news, the streamer was supposed to participate in PlayerUnknown's Battleground, Clash of the Titans, but in the end she entered the wrong game and sneaked into PlayerUnknown's Battleground, crate as soon as you land. May I ask, such a cheater, when did the GM ban her account? Nutty and Little Pudding, #PickNose1. Kiki, the streamer has banned the GM account. Are you afraid? Xinyue, GM, Jiang Pingji, can you have some F*King self-awareness? Streamer, I don't have any F*King self-awareness. I'm very arrogant. Jiang Pingji looked at the screen full of jokes, and the corners of her lips curled up. Well, to a certain extent, Nutty and Little Pudding was correct. She could indeed ban the GM account, but would the subsystem be banned? After sweating all over and eating breakfast, Jiang Pingji began to deal with official business. They had just gained a foothold in Chenyan County in Song Prefecture, and the grain line was barely smooth. However, the Mengs were the local tyrant of Song Prefecture. They had been operating in Song Prefecture for hundreds of years, and their resources were immeasurable. Jiang Pingji was afraid that if she was not careful, she would reveal a flaw and give the Mengs an opportunity. During that time, other than Meng Heng who sent some documents, Jiang Pingji basically buried herself in all kinds of bamboo slips and documents. She could keep her composure but the subsystem could not. Jiang Pingji, what's your background? The subsystem number one's voice carried a hint of anger, as if it was a girl who found out that her rich fiancé was a country bumpkin who owed millions of yuan. The girl's heart was deeply hurt, and she scolded the heartless person. Jiang Pingji was also curious. What background can I have? Didn't I tell you before? The subsystem number one gritted its teeth and said, if you don't have a background, do you really think the sword in your hand fell from the sky? The appearance of the God Slayer instantly broke the balance between Jiang Pingji and the system. The subsystem had a natural fear of the patrolling merchants, like a criminal who saw the police. It was naturally afraid. It never imagined that the patrolling merchants would appear and leave behind such a precious weapon. What did Jiang Pingji do to deserve this? He was merely a mortal. Even if he was the chosen one of this plane, he was nothing more than an ant to the planar patrol merchants. Not to mention taking care of her or befriending her, it was a waste of time to look at her. Therefore, the subsystem number one could not figure out the reason why the patrolling merchants took care of Jiang Pingji. After thinking about it, it felt that Jiang Pingji must have a backer. I'm not like you, full of lies. Jiang Pingji sneered. She said, I've told you everything about my background. Genetic warriors were equivalent to death soldiers. Their mortality rate was far higher than the federal elites on the battlefield. If Jiang Pingji had a backer, how could she have been chosen? Most importantly, before becoming a genetic warrior, one had to erase their past memories to ensure absolute loyalty to the Federation. Based on this alone, Jiang Pingji was certain that she had no background. The subsystem number 1 did not listen. You're lying. It looked at Jiang Pingji's basic information again. At the age of 35, she took over the heavy responsibility of being the head of the army from her former superior. Before that, she was promoted to the rank of brigadier general based on her military merits. After that, she gained the favor of the previous head of the army and became one of the candidates for the successor. Although Jiang Pingji was indeed capable of being the head of the army, her rank did not match. She had taken a huge leap. Was she not afraid of her crotch splitting? Actually, if the subsystem number 1 understood the war environment in Jiang Pingji's previous life, her experience was not considered unexpected. There were many geniuses who were better than her. She was very inspirational, but she was only considered average. She was young, but she had been in the army for longer than many senior generals. You must have a backer. The system had cheated countless hosts, but it had never thought that it would encounter a cheat that it could not afford to provoke. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She was inexplicably angry. If I had a backer, I would have turned you into ashes 800 years ago. In her previous life, she had climbed up by relying on her own abilities. How could she be accused of having connections because of a single sentence from the system? If it weren't for the fact that I can't bear to part with the people in the streaming room, I really want to cut all of you up. The God Slayer in the baby's hand was already restless and thirsty. With the existence of the God Slayer, Jiang Pingji was not so afraid of the system. She could calmly wait for the day the net was drawn. Now she was the one who played chess. Chapter 1073. Zixiao, what are you carrying? Meng Heng and the rest were busy, but Wei Ci, who usually arrived first, was late. He seemed to be carrying something in his arms. A faint smile appeared on Wei Ci's face. He moved his right hand slightly, and a small head timidly popped out of his wide sleeve. Its bright black eyes looked around, and its 2 claws were placed on both sides of its head. The pink and tender claws were crystal clear. The little thing whimpered like a baby's unconscious humming, with a hint of laziness and coquettishness. Coupled with its harmless and adorable appearance, no one could harden their heart upon seeing it. Meng Heng knew what it was at a glance. Isn't this the cub of an iron-eating beast? Zixiao likes this little thing too? Wei Ci did not like it at all. It was obvious that the Lord did not tell him how to deal with it. It was clingy, so he had no choice but to bring it along in case no one took care of it. Before Wei Ci could explain, Meng Heng said, an iron-eating beast cub looks harmless and interesting, but it's different when it grows up. Ferocious beasts are wild and hard to tame. If Zixiao keeps it by your side, there's no guarantee that it won't hurt you. It's fine to raise it now, but not when it's older. Wei Ci looked down at the little fellow, and his lips curled into a faint smile. The little fellow did not know what was going on. It laid there, opened its mouth and bit his sleeve. After a long while it spat it out. I understand. Thank you for the reminder, Sergio, Wei Ci said. I heard that iron-eating beast cubs are very fragile and not easy to raise. If Zixiao likes it, it's better to find an experienced servant and let him take care of it. Meng Heng kindly reminded him. Iron-eating beasts were different from ordinary pets. Looking at this cub, it was about 2 to 3 months old. If it was not carefully taken care of, it might die. I heard that iron-eating beasts are very protective of their cubs. Where did Zixiao get one? Wei Ci could not talk about what happened last night, so he could only vaguely say, I picked it up by accident. Meng Heng nodded in understanding. He said, iron-eating beasts are different from ordinary beasts. Their cubs are all taken care of by their mother. Mother beasts are very protective of their cubs. Under normal circumstances, they would not abandon their own children. Zixiao picked it up by accident, perhaps because its mother had met with misfortune. It's good for you to raise it. Although it's a little beast, it's so cute. It would be a pity if it died prematurely. Unbeknownst to them, Meng Heng's words hit the nail on the head. When this black and white meatball was found, its mother's body was already stiff, and the cub had been starving for 2 days. As it was not convenient for the person who found the cub to keep it, he threw it to Jiang Pingji and it landed in Wei Ci's hands. Wei Ci was a busy man. When he was busy, he could not take care of the little guy. He could only prepare a basin of milk with good honey for it. Meng Heng had said that an iron-eater cub's stomach was not as strong as an adult vicious beast's, so it could not be fed with normal food. The black and white meatball was also very obedient. It buried its entire head in the small basin and licked it from time to time. Its two meaty claws clung to the edge of the basin and refused to let go. It licked and licked until the bottom of the small basin of milk could be seen, but it still wanted more. Since when did Zixiao like this kind of thing? The black and white meatball burped and was about to crawl towards Wei Ci when an abominable big hand picked it up. Feng Zhen pinched the plump flesh on Meatball's body, and the little fellow let out two disgruntled cries. Wei Ci repeated helplessly. I picked it up by chance. Feng Zhen bullied the black and white meatball. The little fellow cast a pair of pitiful eyes at Wei Ci for help and extended its meaty claws towards him. Hey, it's quite intelligent. All living things have intelligence. It knows who is good to it and who is bad to it. Wei Ci saw that Feng Zhen was despised by the black and white meatball, and the corners of his lips curled into a deeper smile. You guys are quite free. Wei Ci was about to take the black and white meatball back when Jiang Pingji's voice came from outside. My lord. Wei Ci and Feng Zhen bowed at the same time. Feng Zhen wanted to stuff the black and white meatball into his sleeves to destroy the evidence of slacking during office hours. The viewers in the streaming room had sharp eyes and noticed the black and white meatball. Fengqi Wudong, streamer, I'm exposing a thief who stole a panda. Hidden Fogja, Feng Longzi, why haven't you put down the national treasure? If you keep holding on to it, the national treasure Fatida will feel very uncomfortable. Sui Qingxia, streamer, you've released the pandas of the Gaoyue tribe deep into the mountains. I thought I wouldn't be able to see pandas in the streaming room in my lifetime. I didn't expect you to be such a person. You actually took advantage of us not noticing to secretly keep the smallest and cutest. Xiaoxiu Wushuang, streamer, today I'm streaming stroking cats. Even if you don't do anything and just look at Fatida, the baby will be satisfied. Jiang Pingji asked with a smile, Zisher, who asked you to hide my daughter? Feng Zhen couldn't wrap his head around it. When did he hide a young master? Bah. Since when did he have a young master? He was stunned. After a while, he realized that the daughter Jiang Pingji was referring to was the meatball in his hand. Did you raise it, my lord? If I didn't raise it, could it be that you raised it? Jiang Pingji took back the black and white meatball. The little fellow nestled in Jiang Pingji's arms obediently. Its two meaty paws covered its eyes. It looked like it was sleeping soundly, but in fact, it secretly moved one of its paws to observe Feng Zhen. Feng Zhen looked at Wei Ci and then at his lord. His eyes flashed with understanding. He tactfully left to give Wei Ci and Jiang Pingji some space to interact. The audience keenly sensed that something was wrong. The atmosphere between their streamer and Beauty Ci was too warm and harmonious. Liangshimuzidazi, it can't be, the single dog streamer is finally going to abandon us? Pianxindia Wu, woof, I'm crying. I'm going to be abused just watching a live stream. Is there no place for single dogs in this world? Reality proved that the audience's worries were unnecessary. Jiang Pingji and Wei Ci weren't people who prioritized relationships. Most of their conversation was related to work. It had nothing to do with romance, only boring political affairs. Is there any news from Bogeo? Jiang Pingji asked Wei Ci as she stroked the meatball's fur. Wei Ci could only put down the pen in his hand and said seriously, Magistrate Huang used Gorge River as a foothold and sent troops north to Cangzhou. My lord annihilated the Meng's minions, the Gaoyue clan. Calculating the time, Magistrate Huang should have sent news of victory. However, I'm worried about something. What is it? Wei Ci said, I'm worried about the leader of the Mengs in Cangzhou, Meng Zhan. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and smiled. What's there to worry about? Wei Ci said, ever since my lord annihilated the Gaoyue clan, the Meng seem to have given up struggling. Our army attacked Chenyan County and encountered almost no resistance along the way. The more it's like this, the more I feel uneasy. Meng Zhan is ruthless and not easy to deal with. Wei Ci was worried that Meng Zhan was preparing a big move. As someone who had been reborn, Wei Ci's prophetic advantage was getting smaller and smaller. However, some people's temperaments hadn't changed. He could always find some clues. According to Wei Ci's understanding, Meng Zhan wasn't someone who would easily admit defeat. His ambition was greater than his clan. In his previous life, Meng Zhan married his mistress's daughter to Huang Song. The two families united by marriage and plotted against each other. However, Meng Zhan was one step behind. He didn't manage to take over Huang Song's foundation. Instead, Huang Song took advantage of him. Unable to reverse the situation, guess what Meng Zhan did? He promised two families for one Cangzhou. One was the Yi family of Beiyuan, and the other was the Nye family of Zhongzhou. Giving up Zhanjiang Pass and Yumen Pass opened the door for the two families to covet Dongqing's territory. Chapter 1074. There were 5 countries in the world with wide terrains and different climates. Zhongzhou had the largest area, the most fertile land, and the most powerful country. It had always been in existence that the other 4 countries coveted but dared not touch. Dongqing and Xichang had moderate climates, but the former had internal strife while the latter had a smaller territory. They didn't have an advantage among the 5 countries. Beiyuan was a cold and bitter land with long winters and short summers. Its terrain was more northerly than the Beijiang and its people were tough. As for Nanxing, it was humid and rainy with heavy miasma. There were many rivers and rivers. It had been destroyed by the 4 factions of Nanman, so it wasn't worth mentioning. The Dongqing royal family existed in name only. The feudal lords in Zhongzhou were divided, while the aristocrats in Beiyuan were in charge. The Yi family in Beiyuan was even more powerful than the royal family in Beiyuan. Jiang Pengji thought of Meng Zhan's record of colluding with the Beijiang. Her originally warm expression turned gloomy. If Meng Zhan was really crazy and let go of Zhanjiang Pass and Yumen Pass, he would lead a wolf into the house. Dongqing's already chaotic situation would be even worse. The black and white ball of meat in her arms whimpered. It seemed to feel the hostility from her and showed a wronged expression. Jiang Pengji inserted her fingers into the ball's fur and stroked it from time to time to soothe its emotions. Zixiao, are you worried that the forces in Zhongzhou and Beiyuan will intervene in Dongqing? Jiang Pengji said, your worry isn't unreasonable. The Mengs didn't hesitate to cooperate with the forces in the Beijiang to make trouble for me. Now that I've forced them to a dead end, it's hard to guarantee that they won't give up. The Mengs harmed others without benefiting themselves. They would rather give Cangzhou to others than see it fall into Jiang Pengji's hands. Jiang Pengji curled her lips and sneered. I just killed a bastard son. Meng Zhan is ruthless. He bore grudges for 7 or 8 years. Wei Xi showed a helpless expression. If Meng Zhan had heard what he said, he would have jumped up in anger. What did she mean by, I just killed a bastard son? Meng Zhan didn't have many children. He would be heartbroken if he lost one. Jiang Pengji pinched the pads of the black and white ball of meat and held its little claws in her hands. She played with it and said, Zixiao, you reminded me of something. Compared to the forces in Zhongzhou and Beiyuan, we should be more worried about Bogeo. Wei Xi was stunned. Does my lord mean that Prefecture Overseer Huang poses a greater threat? It's not that Bogeo is a big threat. I'm just worried that the Mengs will have the idea of sending 3 people to the same place. Not only did he contact the Yi clan of Beiyuan and the Nye clan of Zhongzhou, I'm afraid he also contacted Bogeo in secret. She smiled, her eyes revealing a scheming glint. The Yi family of Beiyuan or the Nye family of Zhongzhou may be powerful, but their foundation in Dongqing is too shallow. If Meng Zhan was sent out of Cangzhou, the 2 families might not be able to defend themselves. On the other hand, if Meng Zhan gave Cangzhou to Bogeo, it would be Bogeo's territory. Would I be able to snatch it from Bogeo's hands? Since the foreign powers had already sent gifts, there was no reason for the neighboring feudal powers to not send gifts as well. To put it bluntly, before Meng Zhan died, he wanted to create some hatred for Jiang Pengji. When Wei Xi thought of this, his face turned as pale as snow. According to his understanding of Meng Zhan, it was highly likely that he would do so. Wait a minute, an idea flashed in Wei Xi's mind. He suddenly understood something and his expression was extremely solemn. Master, oh no. What's wrong? Jiang Pengji asked. I'm afraid the Mengs don't have any soldiers to use. Wei Xi said, ever since we entered Cangzhou, the biggest obstacle our army encountered was the Gaoyue clan. After destroying the Gaoyue clan, we attacked Chenyan County, but we didn't encounter any decent resistance along the way. That was unusual. I thought the Mengs were deliberately trying to mislead us. Now that I think about it, it's highly likely that the Mengs didn't have enough troops. Meng Zhan simply transferred the troops from Chenyan County to guard Meng County. They used this to create the illusion that they had enough troops to divert attention so that our army wouldn't dare to act rashly. Then they secretly sent them out of Cangzhou. The Mengs were militaristic and Cangzhou wasn't as good as it used to be. Coupled with the destruction of the Gaoyue clan, the Mengs' continued resistance would result in the same result. More than half of Cangzhou would fall into Jiang Pengji's hands. Since that was the case, it was better to make a good plan while there was still room for change. Using Cangzhou, which didn't have much value, to give Jiang Pengji a few strong enemies. What a good deal. Thinking of this, Jiang Pingji's face darkened. Send scouts into Meng County to spy on them and see how many troops they have. Jiang Pingji's reaction wasn't slow, but she underestimated Meng Zhan's craziness. When he tricked the Gaoyue clan to die, Meng Zhan had secretly sent a few letters to the Nyes of Zhongzhou and the Yis of Beiyuan. As long as the two families agreed to send troops, the Cangzhou horse farm would be handed over. While waiting for news from the two families, Meng Zhan also wrote a secret letter to Huang Song. The secret letter recorded the grudges between the Mengs and Jiang Pingji in detail. Every word was bloody. It was a textbook of selling pity. At first, Huang Song didn't believe it, but he felt it was a waste not to take a bite of the pie that was delivered to him. A pie that fell from the sky wouldn't be that delicious. If he accepted Cangzhou from Meng Zhan, he would definitely have a conflict with Jiang Pingji. Huang Song hadn't conquered Qinzhou yet. His troops were too weak to challenge Jiang Pingji. Accept? Not accept? At the crucial moment, Nie Sun came out and offered a vicious plan. If the Mengs are willing to secretly send troops to Qinzhou, then we will accept the benefits Meng Zhan promised. Huang Song didn't understand for a while, but the other strategists in the tent did. They looked at Nie Sun with some fear. If Nie Sun asked the Mengs to send troops to destroy the royal family, then the Mengs would bear the reputation of the traitors. Then Huang Song could claim Qinzhou under the banner of justice. If he didn't do that, Huang Song would have to bear a certain amount of stigma if he wanted to conquer Qinzhou. No matter how weak the royal family was, it was still the royal family. All the feudal lords in Dongqing coveted Qinzhou, but none of them wanted to stand out when the royal family was there. If the Mengs were willing to bear the eternal blame, then Huang Song would not only be innocent but also meritorious if he attacked Qinzhou. When Huang Song sent the message to Meng Zhan, the veins on Meng Zhan's forehead bulged. In his rage, he overturned everything that could be overturned. Huang Song, you're so young but you're so ambitious. He didn't want to bear a bit of stigma, but he wanted to take all the benefits. When his anger subsided, Meng Zhan picked up the pen with trembling fingers and wrote a reply to Huang Song with mixed feelings. He suppressed his anger while writing the letter, swallowing the taste of iron that rose in his throat. It's a good thing to be ambitious. Only with great ambition can you fight against Lu Shi for a long time. If Huang Song was weak and couldn't stop Jiang Pingji's cavalry, he would vomit blood. Without Jiang Pingji knowing, Huang Song and Meng Zhan reached an agreement to cooperate. Meng Zhan sent troops to Qinzhou to kill the royal family, and Huang Song followed closely to rescue them. Unfortunately, when Huang Song arrived, the royal family was completely destroyed. Not a single person was left alive. Huang Song could only reluctantly take over the mess. When Jiang Pingji sent scouts to investigate the specific troops in Meng County, Huang Song had already secretly taken over Qinzhou. Not only that, Huang Song also conquered another county in Cangzhou with irresistible force. His army surrounded Meng County. Chapter 1075. What Wei Xiai and Jiang Pingji were worried about had happened. Huang Song had taken over Qinzhou and Song Prefecture. The Mengs had surrendered with Meng Prefecture. In other words, Jiang Pingji hadn't gained anything. Huang Song had taken all the advantages. If Jiang Pingji hadn't restrained the Gaoyues, they would have suffered great losses. They wouldn't even have gotten Shenyang County. Her face darkened. Her dark eyes flashed with murderous intent. The atmosphere was heavy, sticky, and suffocating. The ministers and generals felt oppressed. The fat man was even more afraid. He tried his best to curl himself into a ball. He rubbed his head against Wei Xi's palm. He wanted to hide his entire body in it. He let out a low whimper as if he was afraid of something. Only in this way could it feel a sense of security. Wei Xi caressed the fur on its head and back with his palm while he raised his hand nonchalantly and covered its body with his sleeve. Meng Zhan, that old man, he's so calculative. Jiang Pingji held a copper paperweight in her hand. Everyone could clearly see the deep finger marks on the paperweight. The entire paperweight was twisted. They could imagine how angry Jiang Pingji was at that moment. He set me up before he died. If I don't fight back, he'll think I'm made of mud. Meng Hing sat with his head down. He didn't say a word. He retracted his gaze, his face calm and tranquil. No one dared to make a sound. They were afraid to touch Jiang Pingji's bottom line. Meng Zhan had gone too far this time. His plan was ruthless. With Huang Song's help, it was obvious that he wanted Jiang Pingji to swallow this loss. Wei Xiai secretly looked around. Seeing that everyone was pretending to be dead one by one, he could only bite the bullet and stand out. My lord, there's no solution to this situation. In my opinion, it's better to retreat in order to advance. Everyone knows that my lord is holding back the Mengs. With your hard work, Magistrate Huang can sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's not too much for my lord to take half of Meng County. All in all, they couldn't let Huang Song take over Meng County. Jiang Pingji sneered. Take half. Isn't that better? If the Mengs did not make such a move, Jiang Pingji could admit defeat and be convinced that Huang Song had conquered 2 counties in Sangzhou with his military strength. Who knew that the Meng family would play tricks at this critical juncture? Not only did they help Huang Song take over Qinzhou, but they also gave up 2 counties. The Mengs did this to annoy Jiang Pingji. In this way, if she could swallow this insult, she would not be called Jiang Pingji. Wei Ci sighed and consoled her. Our army has the advantage of geographical and human conditions. Unfortunately, time is not on our side and we have made a mistake. Given the situation, my lord, please don't get angry and harm your health. The only thing we can do now is to think of a way to stop the losses in time. Please reconsider, my lord. Wei Ci was not frightened by Jiang Pingji. Instead, he advised her to calm down with a gentle voice. For a moment, Meng Hun and the other generals looked at him with awe. Their lord's aura was too frightening. Even if they were numb to killing, they were still sweating profusely. The back of their clothes was drenched in sweat. The gazes of the civil officials were much more complicated. A true warrior dared to face an erupting volcano and a furious lord. Wei Ci was the lord's personal fire extinguisher. Although Jiang Pingji was angry, she was still rational. Seeing that the atmosphere in the tent was stagnant, she slightly restrained her aura. Seeing that her expression had cleared up, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. If their lord remained in a state of rage, even if they were not scared to death, they would be nervous to death. Feng Jin secretly wiped his sweat and bowed. I really have a plan. Maybe we can stop the losses. Jiang Pingji raised her eyelids. Her expression was calm and unruffled, as if she was not the one who had exploded in anger. Zisher, what plan do you have? Tell me. Feng Jin sorted out his thoughts and bowed. My lord is the appointed magistrate of Wanzhou by the imperial court. You receive your lord's salary, so you should share his burdens. The Mengs are treacherous. They rebelled against their superiors and massacred the royal family. Their crimes are too numerous to list. My lord is a loyal official. Naturally, you must avenge your lord and kill the traitors with your own hands. This was something that Prefecture Overseer Huang could understand. Why don't we send troops from Hu County to Qinzhou to rescue you? Jiang Pingji said angrily. The royal family is all dead. Feng Jin's eyes shone. Which man in the world doesn't like women? Who can guarantee that the Mengs have really killed off the royal family? Perhaps there are still some among the people. My lord has been receiving the imperial court's salary for many years. You should preserve some of the royal family's descendants. If the Mengs said that they had killed off the royal family, then they had really been killed? Would loyal officials and generals not be allowed to lead troops to search for their descendants? Based on this reason alone, Jiang Pingji had the right to deploy troops to Qinzhou. Huang Song had many troops but not many. If he wanted to completely control Qinzhou, it would take some time. While the enemy's foundation was not stable, it was better to besiege Wei to rescue Zhao, and see whether Huang Song wanted Qinzhou or Cangzhou. Meng Hun said worriedly, I'm afraid it will be too late to deploy troops now. Feng Jin said, Commander Meng, have you forgotten about Deputy Commander Jing Rong and Deputy Commander Dian? Jing Rong? Deputy Commander Dian? Meng Hun suddenly understood. Yang Si and Dian Wei had been deployed to Hu County by Jiang Pingji. They were in charge of the alliance with Su Bei and had kept a low profile for many years. Hu County was not far from Qinzhou. If they deployed troops from Hu County, they could definitely make it in time. Jiang Pingji's eyes shone with a cold, calculating light, as if she was considering the feasibility of Feng Jin's words. She turned to ask Feng Jin and the others, Does anyone have anything to say? Feng Jin thought about it, closed his eyes slightly, and cupped his hands in front of his chest. My lord, I don't think it's time to lay my cards on the table with Governor Huang. Jiang Pingji tapped her finger on the table and said coldly, You're right, it's not the right time to lay my cards on the table yet. The atmosphere in the tent was tense. Even the audience in the streaming room did not dare to make jokes. Hearing the conversation between Feng Jin and Jiang Pingji, a few of the more hot-tempered audience could not help but speak up. Qinsi Durian Piao, Meng Zhan is scheming. Huang Song, as an ally, has reached an agreement with the enemy. Although in the face of benefits it's nothing. But Huang Song's actions are still upsetting. Streamer, are you really going to take this loss? Xiang Wuxian Hao, Streamer, when did your temper become so weak? The audience still liked Jiang Pingji, who was always angry. How could she take it lying down when someone was bullying her? Xingye Jingyue, don't be anxious. I think the streamer must have her own considerations. Maybe there's something we don't know. A small portion of the audience was angry, but most of them were calm. There were even some who were secretly happy to see Jiang Pingji suffer a setback. Although she suffered a setback, the streamer had always been smooth sailing. She was angry at everyone, so it was boring to watch. Shimoning, I wonder if there'll be a chance to see Meng Zhan. He counterattacked and made the streamer suffer in silence. That's not easy. Speaking of this, many of the audience expressed their regret. To be able to make the streamer suffer a setback, that's a true warrior. At that moment, a few blue bullet screens appeared timidly. Chapter 1076. All the viewers in the streaming room were dumbfounded. When had they ever seen Meng Zhan? Jiang Pingji also noticed the bullet screen. She frowned and raised her eyebrows. Meng Zhan lived in Sangzhou and she fought all the time. She had never seen Meng Zhan, so it was impossible for the viewers in the streaming room to have seen him. However, Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of something when she saw the color of the bullet screen. She suddenly understood. The viewers in blue were the viewers of the time-traveling woman's streaming room. Jiang Pingji had never seen Meng Zhan, but it didn't mean that the time-traveling woman hadn't seen Meng Zhan. Maybe when the time-traveling woman met Meng Zhan, she had the streaming room open, so the viewers in that dimension had seen Meng Zhan. Jiang Pingji thought for a moment. That was the most likely guess. It turned out that Jiang Pingji's guess was correct. Not only that, but from the comments of the viewer she could more or less guess why Meng Zhan valued the bastard son so much. Tangerine lemon candy. That's old news from a long time ago. I was in my first year of high school and I accidentally entered this streaming room. No, not the streamer's streaming room, the one with the color. Although the content was very embarrassing, the streaming room was very popular. The male and female protagonists were both very good looking. I liked to watch it when I had nothing to do to relieve my stress from studying. The viewer rambled on and on for a long time before he got to the main topic. Orange lemon candy. I remember there was a rich man in the streaming room who issued a task for the streamer to act as a prostitute and attack the son of an aristocratic family. The streamer's target was Lu Shi at first, but then she changed it to Meng Zhan. To be honest, I had a deep impression of Meng Zhan, not because of his high status or good looks, but because he was the first man to defeat the streamer. He was a real man. Jiang Pingji was surprised. She thought Meng Zhan was also a subject of the time-traveling woman, but he wasn't. He even rejected the time-traveling woman. And then? The viewers had the same thought as Jiang Pingji. They were eager to hear the gossip. The viewer didn't keep them waiting. He quickly sent another bullet screen. Orange lemon candy. The streamer is also proud. As a fairy, how could she be rejected by a mortal? She and Meng Zhan didn't end well. When they were arguing, the streamer said Meng Zhan had weak sperm and called him a natural eunuch. Later, the streamer even arranged a doctor to attack Meng Zhan. I remembered that Meng Zhan had a few maids who warmed his bed. They served him for a few years, but they didn't have any children. Looking at the bullet screen, Jiang Pingji vaguely pieced together the truth of that year. If Meng Zhan really had asthenospermia, it would be extremely difficult for him to make women infertile. It was not unreasonable for him to suspect the blood of Meng Hang and Ye Sun. Under the woman's scheme, the wedding procession was ambushed by bandits the night before Gu Zhen married Meng Zhan. Although the reinforcements had arrived in time and saved the people, it was impossible for Meng Zhan to not have a thorn in his heart. Unfortunately, Gu Zhen did not shed any blood on her wedding night, which seemed to further prove the fact that she had been defiled by the bandits. After that, Gu Zhen was found to be pregnant. Calculating the time, it happened to be around the time of the wedding. Meng Zhan was well aware of his body's problem. Although he had the ability to conceive, the chance of success was too small. It couldn't be a coincidence. At this time, the time-traveling woman created another illusion, letting Meng Zhan see the scene of Gu Dai having an affair with her servant. At this stage, Meng Zhan could still tolerate it. However, Gu Zhen's unwillingness to abort the fetus in her belly deepened Meng Zhan's suspicion. After a series of punches, Gu Zhen and Meng Zhan fell out of each other's hearts. The time-traveling woman tormented Gu Zhen, not only because of Gu Min but also because of Meng Zhan. Meng Zhan rejected the charming time-traveling woman and married Gu Min's stepsister. How could the time-traveling woman tolerate it? She wouldn't rest until she made some trouble for him. Thinking about it, Jiang Pingji felt that the time-traveling woman was even more disgusting. She only destroyed her soul, which was too easy for her. Pusixio. A weak sperm. Now that you mention it, Meng Zhan's head can be grazed with sheep. Tongzi Liangliangtang. Weak sperm isn't absolute infertility. It's just that the probability of getting pregnant is much lower than normal people. This disease can still be improved through nursing. In short, Meng Zhan still has the hope of becoming a father. The fact proved that the audience was right. The time-traveling woman pointed out the defects in Meng Zhan's body. He invited doctors and asked for medicine to cultivate his mind. Although it wasn't as good as normal people, after a few times he could still have his own children. That was how Meng Zhan's illegitimate son came about. After Gu Zhen fell out of favor, the number of women in Meng Zhan's backyard increased. Everyone's whereabouts were strictly monitored to prevent the possibility of being cuckolded. After so many years, only the concubine and Gu Zhen got pregnant. Their children were Meng Liang and Ye Sun. Meng Zhan didn't believe that Gu Zhen's children were his. Firstly, Gu Zhen's body was weak at that time, and he was in such a condition. They only slept together a few times. The probability of them having children was too low. Secondly, under the interference of the time-traveling woman, Meng Zhan saw Gu Zhen fooling around with the manservants in the front yard. He hated Gu Zhen even more. If it wasn't for the Liu and Gu family's reputation, Meng Zhan would have strangled Gu Zhen to death. Why would he spare her life? The streaming room was bustling with gossip. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Meng Zhan had schemed against her before. If she didn't retaliate, it would be too easy for the old man. In this era, there was a habit of not killing those who surrendered. Meng Zhan surrendered to Huang Song. Logically speaking, Huang Song wouldn't kill him. But Jiang Pingji didn't care. Jiang Pingji's temper was too tough. Huang Song didn't know her very well, but he knew most of it. Therefore, after he accepted Meng Zhan's surrender, he didn't let him go. Instead, he locked him up in prison. The rest of the Mengs were demoted to commoners. Guards were sent to watch them. I heard that Meng County is rich and populous. Looks like it doesn't live up to its name. Although he was locked up in prison, the cell was clean and tidy. The bedding still smelled like sunshine. Meng Zhan had 3 meals a day. His life wasn't bad. Although he had surrendered Meng County, there were still too many secrets in Meng Zhan's mind. If Huang Song wanted to know more, he had to deal with him. The more he interacted with him, the more curious Huang Song became. Meng Zhan was obviously a cunning old fox. Why did he act so aggressively? If he had given in to Jiang Pingji, Meng Zhan wouldn't have been able to maintain his former glory, but the Mengs could continue to exist. But now he had made one wrong move after another. He had lost all his trump cards. Meng Zhan sneered. Governor Huang, you really got what you wanted. I'm no match for you in terms of ambition. I'm even worse when it comes to appetite. Meng Zhan's face was full of fatigue. He looked much older than his actual age. His eye sockets were deep and his eye bags were heavy. His eyes were like a ghost's, making people uncomfortable. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.